It was the morning I turned 18. I'd scraped together cash from odd jobs to buy a cake. The kids at the orphanage were hyped to celebrate with me. After today, I'd have to pack up and leave the only home I'd ever known. But when I got back, a cop car was parked right outside. I didn't think much of it at the time. I walked inside and called out for Director Wong, the woman who actually raised me. Yet, instead of the little ones running up to greet me, two officers stepped forward holding handcuffs. They claimed I was tied to a hit and run. I told them they had it all wrong. I didn't even own a bicycle, let alone a whole car. They cuffed me anyway. I set the cake down on the floor and told Director Wong to share it with the kids. I promised I'd be back soon, but she just looked at me with pity and told me to just confess if I'd really messed up. That's the exact moment I knew something was seriously off. Down at the station, they showed me a blurry security camera photo. A wrecked red sports car with a young guy inside. The guy looked just like me. Then they pulled out a signed document. Some official family recognition statement, linking me to a man named Eugene Sean. It claimed he had gifted me an 8 million yuan sports car. They even had a blood report placing me at the crash scene. I had never even heard of Eugene Sean. I had never signed a single thing. I had never even touched that car. Right then, a middle-aged gentleman in a suit walked in. The second I saw his face, something stirred deep inside. He looked incredibly familiar, even though we'd never met. He spoke up. I am Eugene Sean. I am your father. Suddenly, everything clicked. The forged paperwork, the fabricated evidence, the door manager, lying and saying I wasn't in my bed that night. He had orchestrated the whole thing. He made it crystal clear. My younger half-brother, Ming Yuan, had just scored a spot at an elite martial arts academy. He couldn't let the kid end up behind bars, so he needed me to take the rap for him. He promised to pay out once I got out, acting like he was doing me some huge favor. I yelled at him, "You ditched me 18 years ago, and now you show up just to throw me in the slammer." He didn't even blink. He just muttered, "If you were my flesh and blood, I wouldn't have even bothered to drop by." Then he walked out. He didn't even use my actual blood. He just had someone fake the lab results. A month later, I was standing in the courtroom. The judge handed me a 15-year sentence for vehicular manslaughter and hit and run. I didn't even fight it. There was absolutely no point. Every single piece of evidence had been rigged to frame me. Up in the gallery, my so-called father sat with a totally blank face. Right next to him was Ming Yuan, the very brother I was ruining my life for. He looked up from his phone and smirked at me. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was dripping with contempt. 2 months down the road, a prison bus transferred me to Haixing First Prison. The exact moment my feet hit the dirt, this bizarre robotic voice echoed inside my head. Compatible host detected. Synchronization in progress. Martial Dao self-improvement system. Successfully bound. I froze for a split second, then kept following the guard through the iron gates. Once I got processed into the facility, they strip-searched me and checked everything, then tossed me a uniform and basic toiletries. I went through the motions like a total zombie. 3 months had dragged by since my arrest. 3 grueling months stuck in a detention center, where I considered appealing 1,000 times. But every shred of evidence used against me was flawlessly framed. I didn't stand a chance, so I just dropped it. The only thing keeping me sane was this weird system that popped up in my head. It called itself the Martial Dao Self-Improvement System. From what I could gather, it would passively level up my strength the second I started training in martial arts. But there was a massive catch. How on earth was I going to learn Kung Fu? While locked up, roughly a century ago, a mysterious energy flooded our home planet, Blue Star. Those practicing traditional martial arts suddenly unlocked mind-blowing power, and that's how the martial Dao era kicked off. Yet, even after all these years, combat arts remain a rich man's game. Elite families hoard all the resources, leaving regular guys like me completely in the dust. The sole ticket out was scoring a spot at a top martial arts academy, which is exactly what my half-brother, Ming Yuan, did. That's why I'm rotting in this cell instead of him. Squeezing my fists tightly, I told myself, all right, I'll wait out the 15 years and train once I'm free. As long as I keep that inner fire burning, I can make it through this. When my number was called for cell assignment, a hitch came up. They were totally out of beds. A bunch of inmates had just been transferred in from another block. The warden ordered them to throw me into cell number 1 as a quick placeholder. The guard handling the bunk assignments looked visibly shaken, muttering that cell number 1 hadn't seen a new face in ages, and that I might not make it out alive. But the warden didn't give a damn. Cell number 1 sat at the absolute back of the block. Stepping inside, I took in the standard layout. For bunk beds, sleeping 8 people. Yet, only 3 guys were in there, which felt pretty weird for a prison that was supposedly packed to the brim. I gave him a polite hello, but got total silence. In bed 1, An old-timer with white hair lay resting, completely tuning me out. In bed 2, a middle-aged guy with a black eye patch sat upright, ignoring me just the same. In bed 3, there was another old man with a long scar, stretching from his eye right down to his mouth. At least the scarred old guy spared me a glance. But that was it. I headed to my assigned spot, bunk number 8, right by the toilet, just like back in detention, and started flipping through the prison regulations. Suddenly, a shadow loomed over me. The scarred old man was standing directly in front of me. "Kid, you look like a totally regular guy. How'd you end up locked in this cell? What's your story?" I told him straight up. I didn't do a thing. I was set up. He smirked, and that facial scar contorted like a centipede, creeping across his skin. He muttered, "Whoever framed you must have some serious pull to make that happen." I replied that it was the E family, one of the 10 most powerful clans in Haicheng. Recognizing the name, he asked if it was E Haiping, the head of the family. I shook my head, clarifying it was E Jinshan, his son. The old-timer chuckled, calling E Jinshan a total waste, then leaned in a bit closer to ask a question that set my heart racing. "Do you want payback?" I looked up, saying, "Of course I do," but then I just lowered my head again. There's no way I can handle the E clan. He just burst out laughing and told me the E family was a joke. E Haiping was merely at the peak of the postnatal realm. If I managed to break through to the innate realm, wiping out the E clan would be a piece of cake. I didn't have a clue what those words meant back then. Postnatal? Innate? Turns out, he was talking about martial arts cultivation tiers. My eyes went wide. He was offering to train me. "Be my disciple," he urged. "I'll help you reach the innate realm, and then you can head out and absolutely crush the E family." "What do you say?" Before I could even respond, the guy sporting the eye patch cut in with a cold sneer. He called the old-timer a total fraud, claiming the old guy himself was stuck at the upper postnatal level, so he had no right, promising to guide anyone to the innate stage. The scarred old man's face instantly darkened. He warned the eye patch guy to watch his mouth. The guy with the eye patch stood up, cracked his neck, and glared right back at him. "You think you can make me?" The two of them, the scarred old-timer and the eye patch fellow, were right on the edge of brawling. The sheer pressure radiating from them gave me goosebumps. But right before blows were exchanged, the elderly man on bed 1 spoke up without even stirring. "If you three don't pipe down, I'll chop you to pieces and feed you to the mutts." His tone was deadpan, almost indifferent, yet both of them shut up instantly and slid back into their seats. That reaction gave me all the answers I needed. The prisoner on bed 1 was top dog in this cell, hands down, so I did something totally reckless. I stepped right up to his bunk and bowed low. I begged him to accept me as his pupil. With my heart thumping in my chest, I waited. A single phrase hit back. "Beat it." An unseen surge of sheer force crashed into me. Gasping for air, I took a step back, in utter defeat, and slumped onto my mattress. Hu Yanfeng, that scarred old-timer, as I'd shortly find out, gave me a thumbs up. He let me know that the old guy in bed 1, Elder Chien, would never take on apprentice. Then, he pitched his offer once more. He noted that starting at 18, with absolutely no training, I was way behind the curve. Yet, he possessed a method tailored just for me. In just a few years, I could hit the postnatal realm. Sure, that wasn't enough to challenge the E clan's big boss, but it was plenty to absolutely demolish E Junshan. Something about his kindness felt fishy, though. Some random guy doesn't just hand you power for free. Still, I was completely out of options. Elder Chien refused to even glance my way, and the guy with the eye patch wasn't offering. So I gave in. I dropped to my knees like they do in those old period dramas. Addressing him as Master Hu, Li Yinfeng chuckled and took me under his wing. He broke down the fundamentals of martial cultivation. There are 4 primary tiers: body tempering postnatal, innate, and grandmaster. Each stage features 4 levels: entry, minor mastery, major mastery, and peak. My journey had to begin with body tempering, which meant conditioning my muscles, skin, and bones until they became as tough as steel. He told me he'd passed down the myriad tribulations. Body forging technique. It bypassed grueling physical workouts entirely. Rather, I'd have to channel cosmic energy deep into my core through breath work, purifying myself entirely from the inside out. But first, he had to implant a furnace seed inside me in order to clear out my energy meridians. The guy with the eye patch let out another cold scoff. I caught it. There was definitely mockery in that tone, not just pure irritation. Stopping mid-thought, I straight up asked Li Yinfeng what exactly he expected from me in return. Squinting his eyes, his voice dropped to a freezing chill. "The moment you attain the minor achievement stage of the postnatal realm, I need you to take someone out for me. I had to ask the obvious question here. If he couldn't beat this target at major achievement, how was I supposed to pull it off at minor achievement? He replied that strength wasn't the issue. He couldn't do it simply because he's stuck in prison forever, whereas I'd walk free once my time was served. He refused to tell me who the target was. Not yet, anyway. Not until I hit the required level. Regardless, I held my hand out. I desperately needed this. He grabbed my wrist, forcing something straight into my system. It stung. I could feel a spherical lump moving up my arm, passing over my shoulder, and traveling down to settle right in my lower abdomen. He actually seemed surprised that my energy channels weren't clogged up, considering my age. Then, he began chanting the manual. It was brief, only a few hundred words long, yet incredibly dense and cryptic. The second he finished, the system in my mind chimed. Congratulations, host. You have mastered the Northern Darkness divine art. I went stiff. He had called it the myriad tribulations body forging technique, but my system identified it as the Northern Darkness divine art. Those are two totally different things. Faking like I hadn't memorized it yet, since no ordinary rookie would grasp it on the first try. I asked him to run through it again while he repeated the chant. By then, I'd totally tuned out. I was busy checking the system's breakdown of the skill I'd actually acquired. The Northern Darkness divine art did way more than just condition my body. It could literally siphon martial energy from others. But it came with two catches. First, I couldn't drain anyone more powerful than myself. Second, whoever I targeted needed to be utilizing the exact same Northern Darkness divine art. If they used any other style, both of our internal pathways would be totally trashed. Right then, that one guy's sarcastic scoff flashed in my mind, and the pieces clicked. No such thing as a free lunch. Huli Infong wasn't doing me a favor. He was feeding me this method so down the line, once I got strong enough, he could just harvest my cultivation like a battery. I was basically being raised as a human furnace. I kept my guard up and said nothing. When Hu Yangfeng checked if I followed everything, I just played dumb and muttered that a few parts were confusing. He countered that this was a legendary technique, fully capable of pushing a cultivator straight to the Grandmaster rank. So, obviously, a rookie would find it overwhelming. He drilled it into me 8 times before finally calling quits and heading to his bunk. That's when Eyepatch chimed in. Muking Mungria Li Yimfeng, for chanting such a supreme method out in the open. Wasn't he worried about someone eavesdropping? Ungria Li. Infeng snapped back, saying if Eyepatch wanted a piece of it, he'd better bow and call him master. They were right on the verge of another brawl. But the old-timer on the first bed shifted a bit, and both of them shut their mouths instantly. Perched on my mattress, I put the puzzle together. That whole story about training me for a hit was total BS. Once I got loose, I realized that was likely a lie. His actual plan was just to fatten me up like cattle, and then bleed me of my power. He used the siphoning power of the Northern Darkness divine art. If the system hadn't exposed the skills, true colors, I never would have caught on. But here's the kicker. That absorption goes both ways, since he uses the exact same technique. In theory, I could drain his energy right back. I opted to bide my time and watch. If he really tries to use me as a human battery, I'll flip the script. But if he's being legit, I won't backstab him. He'd take me under his wing, after all. I shifted my focus to the system interface. Inside my mind, it was pretty basic. Just a glowing blue display with 3 simple lines. Host, Iwu Dao. Realm, Mortal, 0/1000. Technique, Northern Darkness divine art. Status, Unlearned, 0 firsts. No prompts, no menus. And nothing to press. I locked eyes with it for a bit, getting pretty annoyed. Is this thing totally useless? I muttered to myself, what's the point of mastering this style if the system doesn't do a thing? The second that thought crossed my mind, a bunch of alerts flashed across the screen. The technique took my trash talk personally. It literally started practicing on its own. Proficiency increased by 10 points. Then it realized I was older and had 0 special talent, so it figured it had to carry itself. Proficiency shot up by another 20 points. Next, it decided it wouldn't let me hold it back, and grinded even harder. Boom, another 30 points. I was completely floored. So this is a self-improving system. It's not about me putting in the work. The martial art itself has consciousness and levels up by itself. Whenever I bait it, I put it to the test. Is it seriously all you've got? I thought. Shamed by the insult, the technique pushed itself to train harder. Another 10 points. I knew I was onto something. The trick was simply to keep egging it on. But then a thought struck me. If it's self-improving, shouldn't it practice on its own accord, instead of requiring me to constantly prod it? So, I decided to test a new tactic. Can't you just practice by yourself? You're supposed to be self-evolving, right? Boom. It worked. The technique developed a mind of its own and commenced auto-training. 10 proficiency points every single minute, plus 1 realm experience point per minute. It was completely hands-free. I didn't lift a finger. Hyped up. I cranked up the pressure. You're still way too weak. Get stronger. Big mistake. The technique completely overexerted itself and plunged straight into a cultivation deviation state, totally locked up for 24 hours. I panicked momentarily, then tried a gentler approach. Hey, it's all right. No need to rush. We will grow powerful together. The deviation vanished on the spot. Feeling validated, the technique fired back up and resumed auto-training. Except now, it was raking in 20 points and 2 experience points per minute, way faster than its previous pace. At that moment, I finally cracked the code of the system. It wasn't just about forcing motivation through tough love. I needed to strike a perfect balance between insults and praise. Push too hard, and the technique would just snap. But throw in a little kindness at the right time, and it would bounce right back stronger than ever. So, basically, I had to become a master of emotional manipulation, directed entirely at my own martial arts technique. Going at this rate, it would hit the basic entry level in less than an hour. Successfully reaching the entry stage of body tempering should wrap up in like 10 hours. Not bad at all. I chilled on my mattress and faked meditating. Meanwhile, my cultivation method did all the heavy lifting solo. Over on bunk 3, Huli Infong eyed me, wearing a smirk that felt pretty damn cold. I tracked the stats from mastery, surging across my system interface. My mind was totally fixed on the moment. I'd bust out of here and get even, with Yi Jin Shan and Yi Ming Yuan for everything. 50 minutes later, the Northern Darkness Divine art hit 900 mastery points. I started getting anxious. Reaching the basic tier within an hour was bound to raise some red flags. I mentally ordered the skill to ease up and chill, telling it that it was plenty powerful already. No dice, the system notification popped up. The skill took that feedback as a total insult, and basically declared that nobody was going to stop its grind to the top. I was stuck just sitting there watching the numbers spike. 9, 20, 949, 60, my chest was pounding crazy fast. This was my very first time training like this. My absolute first time smashing through a cultivation bottleneck. Right at 1,000, things shifted. A surge of heat flared up inside my gut. The furnace core Huli Infong had embedded began throbbing, surging raw power all through my frame. My muscles started flexing and pulling involuntarily. My pulse thudded fiercely while my bones popped loudly. Those loud snaps totally blew my cover. Li Infong bolted upright from his mattress, gazing over at me, completely blown away. Skill breakthrough, marrow cleansing. He muttered under his breath, as the guy with the eye patch gaped in shock. Even the old-timer on the cot. The guy briefly cracked his eyes open, before shutting them right back up. It felt like thousands of ants were creeping under my skin. Super tingly and weird, though it didn't hurt. Actually kinda nice, and it wrapped up in about 30 seconds. The system pinged to confirm. Technique entry successful, along with a sweet bonus of 100 realm EXP points. Even better, the auto-cultivation pace just doubled. My mastery level was now shooting up by 40 every minute, and realm experience by 4 per minute. Moving like this, I'd hit the body tempering stage in a matter of hours. But the real issue was the pace, considering what Hu Yangfeng said, that even natural geniuses spend roughly a whole year reaching major success in refining their bodies. Yet here I was about to smash those milestones in hours. If he caught on, he'd definitely get suspicious, or worse, try to harvest me ahead of schedule, so I had to play it safe. The moment I looked up, both Hu Liangfeng and the guy with the eye patch were staring right at me, so I acted clueless, and asked the master why my skin suddenly felt so itchy. He just grinned and gestured toward me. I glanced down. My prison clothes were totally drenched in a nasty, rancid odor hit my nostrils, while beneath my shirt, my body was coated in a layer of dense black sludge, all slick and gooey, looking just like lard. Hu Yangfeng cleared it up, explaining that impurities were being purged from my body, proving that the cultivation method was taking hold. He told me to go get cleaned up, since the stench was getting totally unbearable. Inside our cramped quarters, I questioned if we were even permitted to bathe at this hour, given that, in the detention block, showers were strictly limited to odd-numbered days, capped at 10 minutes in the communal bathroom. Hu Yangfeng simply gestured toward our latrine and replied, "This block operated by its own regulations." The moment I stepped inside the restroom, I went numb. This was seriously a jail restroom? It featured an actual shower and a tub, plus both a squatting toilet and a standard seat. The dry-wet layout was honestly fancier than most hotels. After spending 3 months washing up in a concrete basin, back at the holding facility, this felt like pure heaven. They even had name-brand shampoo and body wash sitting on the ledge. I didn't rush at all, staying in for a solid half hour. It was the most relaxing wash I'd enjoyed in months. Once I walked out, I questioned brotherly info about whether every prison washroom was this high-end. He just rolled his eyes, explaining that this specific unit was something special. It was kept solely for martial artists who had reached the postnatal stage or higher. We were exempt from standard penitentiary protocols. The rations were superior, the gear was better, and we could pretty much do whatever we pleased. There was a catch, though. He mentioned that staying in this block had its pitfalls, too. When I pressed him for details, he kept quiet, merely saying I'd find out for myself tonight. He told me to grab some food, wind down, and stay alert tonight, hinting that things might get heavy. He intended to show me exactly what the actual martial arts world was really like. By 5:30, I was totally famished. Training had completely wiped me out. My gut felt absolutely empty. Over at the detention facility, the food was bare bones. A pair of steamed rolls for breakfast, one meat portion alongside a vegetable side for lunch, and just cabbage or spuds for dinner. I anticipated a repeat of that routine. Suddenly, a guard wheeled in a triple-deck trolley packed with dishes. Slow-cooked pork trotters and steamed chicken, roasted lamb ribs, slow-braised pork belly, and steamed fish, literally just piles of meat. Not a single green in sight, not even any rice. The guard called out to the trio, then glanced my way, ordering me to follow him to the standard mess hall. I got up feeling a bit bummed out, but Hu Yangfeng cut him off. He declared I'd be dining here from now on, and barked at the guard to fetch another plate. The guard attempted to argue back, claiming I was just a regular nobody, and shouldn't get the same perks as the actual martial artists who. Li Yinfeng's eyes narrowed, his voice turning ice cold. He stated he'd taken me on as his disciple, and if the guard had an issue with that, he could bring the warden here to sort it out. Then he threatened to wreck the whole prison if his own food didn't show up immediately. The guard practically bolted out the room, failing to even lock up behind himself. Hu Yingfeng passed me a plate holding an entire stewed pork knuckle and told me to dig in. He mentioned my body required plenty of meat. Now that my cultivation training had begun, he warned me never to go hungry, as it would stall my advancement, and to just speak up whenever I wanted seconds. For a moment, I felt tears welling up. He was showing such kindness, making me wonder if I'd misjudged him. Perhaps he truly was just a decent mentor, and I'd been too harsh, but then reality hit me again. Of course, he wanted me well-nourished. A sturdier frame meant more energy for him to siphon later. If that really was his game, I resolved to keep my guard up. I'd uncover the truth once I hit minor success in the postnatal realm, seeing if he was legit. Then I'd genuinely be honored to call him master. I asked if it was cool to finish off the whole knuckle, seeing as the rest of the guys hadn't eaten yet. Hu Yingfeng mentioned that Elder Qian, on his bunk, no longer had any need for regular food anyway. The guy with the eye patch, whose name happened to be Zhang Hongguang, just shrugged and said he didn't give a damn, arguing a newbie cultivator kid totally required the calories. Suddenly, Zhang Hongguang's vibe completely changed. He gave Hu Yingfeng a stern warning. If he intended on dragging me to the rift later tonight, he better damn well watch my back. He added that he shouldn't come crying if everything hit the fan. Hu Yingfeng just waved him off, claiming he had it covered. I had no clue what this rift was, but it sounded bad news. A few moments later, the guard reappeared wheeling another cart of food, explicitly for me. He muttered something to Hu Yingfeng. The warden wanted to clarify if I'd be heading to the rift too, slaying beasts since I was now getting cell number 1 perks. Hu Yingfeng nodded to confirm, reminding the guard that the incentive program still counted. Taking down monsters meant getting time shaved off the sentence. Now that definitely caught my attention. Killing monsters could actually trim down my 15 years? A million questions raced through my mind. What exactly was the rift? What kind of monsters? But Hu Yingfeng told me to just hold on until tonight, when I'd witness everything firsthand. He promised to teach me a combat technique once I caught my breath, just so I'd have a fighting chance to survive down there. I kept on eating. A single pork knuckle barely even made a dent in my appetite. I reached for a bowl of braised pork belly and began scarfing it down. My metabolism was just completely burning through it all. That old proverb finally clicked for me. Studying is cheap, but martial arts will drain you dry. If an average household tried supporting a martial artist, the grocery bills alone would ruin them. Right after that pork knuckle, I downed a whole steamed chicken, an entire fish, and a whole pound of beef. Zhang Hongguang watched me with an arched brow and remarked that I had real potential for the martial path. Anyone with that kind of appetite clearly had the right foundation. He He brought up how, back when his training first started, he ate just as heavily, but only had basic steamed buns and rice. Failing to get proper nourishment back then had severely stalled his growth. He figured that if his diet had been better, he might have already made the leap into the innate realm. Li Yinfeng just scoffed at that. He pointed out that innate level masters in all of Haicheng could easily be counted on 10 fingers, reminding Zhang Hongguang exactly how long he'd been plateaued. At peak postnatal, that definitely hit a nerve. Zhang Hongguang just rolled his eyes and shut up. I could see that despite their nonstop bickering, the two of them never actually came to blows. They saved their real stamina for what they referred to as the rift. I chilled on my bed, stuffed for the first time in months, watching my system's stats steadily tick upward. An hour later, Li Yinfeng woke me from my doze. It was time to get a handle on combat techniques. He dropped down into a deep stance, knees bent, rooted as solid as a mountain, and began walking me through the 8 extremes fist. He explained that it was a lethal, ancient style, no flashy showmanship, zero wasted movement. The core concept was straightforward. Whenever you throw a punch, your entire body drives into it. Every single blow he delivered unleashed a sharp, explosive pop against the air. It was pure, unadulterated power. Zhang Hongguang observed from his mattress and gave a sarcastic slow clap. He remarked that the 8 extremes fist was decent for thrashing regular folks, but totally useless against actual monsters. Right after, he stood up and offered to teach me something better. Without any preparation or formal stance, he burst forward a single step and unleashed one punch. The sheer impact made the air vibrate. He dubbed it the mountain collapse fist. Just a lone strike, that was the whole deal. Yet that single strike was absolutely devastating. He noted that during the initial phases of martial arts, having 100 techniques is completely unnecessary. You just need one fatal blow to get the job done. Hu Yangfeng was absolutely livid. He countered that the mountain collapse fist was a postnatal level technique, which was way too advanced for anyone who hadn't even begun body tempering yet. My physical frame was simply too weak to survive the recoil. He maintained that the 8 extremes fist was the proper choice since it conditioned the body, established a robust groundwork, and balanced both offensive and defensive moves. Jin Hongguang snapped right back, asking what use a balance style was. If you failed to take down your foe before they killed you. As they bickered, I pulled up my system menu. Both styles had already been logged. A brand new row had popped up under my skill register. Martial arts. The 8 extremes. Fist required 1,000 proficiency points to hit entry level, whereas the mountain collapse fist demanded 10,000. That tenfold gap told me everything I needed to know. The mountain collapse fist was undeniably in a league of its own. Just then, Elder Chien chimed in. He sat up straight for the very first time since I walked in, and his voice instantly cut right through their squabbling. He told them that they were both right. The Bajiquan style provided an excellent baseline, while the Banquan technique packed some lethal force. Even for beginners, his final judgment was, master both. Then he eyed me and declared, I had a mere half hour to get the hang of each style. Right after that, we were heading straight into the rift. He ordered Hu Yinfeng to closely monitor me. Hu Yinfeng asked if I caught everything from the demos. I nodded for both, which totally caught him off guard. My mind was made up. There was 0 point in masking my potential anymore. My main skill was already grinding 24/7 on autopilot, and I couldn't stop it even if I wanted to. It made more sense to make the trio believe that I was some kind of combat prodigy. If Hu Yinfeng bought into me being a real genius, he'd think twice before attempting to leech my power. And if Elder Chien took a liking to me, he might actually back me up if things went sideways. Hu Yinfeng checked me out for a second, then smirked. Looks like I lucked out picking you up. He murmured. I kept quiet, offering no reply to Hu Yinfeng's remark about hitting the jackpot. Honestly, I couldn't tell if he meant finding a highly gifted disciple or tracking down a prime human battery to exploit. Shifting my focus inward, I began manipulating the 2 fresh combat styles. I applied the exact tactic that worked on the Northern Darkness Divine Art, contrasting them with it to guilt them into gear. Hey, Bajiquan. Hey, Benquin. Can't you two take notes from the Northern Darkness art? It's been grinding nonstop since day 1, while you two are just slacking off doing zip. Both styles took the bait from my goading and commenced their practice. But right then, a strange twist occurred. They didn't just train quietly, just like the Northern Darkness Divine Art did. Both styles ditched my body to hunt down challengers. On their own accord, the system reported, they chose to level up through actual combat, and had taken off to find some foes. Right then, the alert started flooding in. 8 Extremes Fist ran into a Tier 1 beast and clashed with it. Plus 50 proficiency points. Mountain Collapse Fist did the exact same thing. The alerts just kept popping up back to back. I was completely spaced out. These martial arts behaved totally differently. From the cultivation method, the Northern Darkness, Divine Art stayed inside to grind passively, boosting my overall tier, while the offensive skills ventured out to pick fights with monsters and ranked up straight from battle experience. Plus, all the combat expertise they picked up was uploaded directly into my brain. I could actually feel fresh instincts kicking in, striking angles, perfect timing, and reflexes I'd never possessed before, as if that experience was being hardwired into my memory. I must have been smirking like a total fool, since Zhang Hongguang snapped me back to reality. Kid, honing martial skills isn't like meditating. Get moving. I cooked up an excuse about needing a moment to process what I've been taught, which instantly sparked another bicker between those two. Hu Yinfeng barked at Zhang Hongguang too. Stay out of it, but Zhang Hongguang shot right back. And this time, he dropped a line that confirmed my worst fears. You know exactly what the Northern Darkness. Divine Art really does, old man. Hu Yinfeng's eyes narrowed. Are you trying to meddle here? Don't forget the laws of the martial world. Zhang Hongguang cast a look my way, then shifted his gaze to Hu Linfeng, shaking his head. Fine, this is between you and your apprentice. Count me out. Right then, I knew without a doubt that Linfeng intended to exploit me as a cultivation vessel. Turns out Zhang Hongguang was aware all along. So that explained why he kept scoffing like that. He felt it was a pity since I actually had real potential. Yet, protocol dictated that he couldn't step in. When it came to a master and his pupil, I glanced over toward Elder Chien, who sat on bed number 1 with his eyes shut. He was the only card I had left to play. If anyone had the power to stop Hu Li Yinfeng, it was him, deciding to probe a bit. Ikastinat Umbria Li Yinfeng. About what caused his spat with Zhang Hongguang. He shrugged it off as some old bad blood, and told me to focus entirely on my cultivation. Nothing else. I didn't press the matter. I simply lacked the strength to challenge him right now. Rising to my feet, I executed the 8 Extremes Fist. Completing just one sequence left me feeling completely nimble and revitalized. Next, I attempted the Mountain Collapse Fist. This one was tougher, my muscles strained under the sheer pressure. Even so, my strike managed to whip up a sudden gust of wind. Seeing this, Zhang Hongguang's eyes flashed with interest, though he quickly glanced back at Hu Linfeng and merely let out a sighing shake of his head. Both of them were totally caught off guard. I had only witnessed each style performed a single time, yet I was already mimicking them with respectable accuracy. Hu Li Yinfeng even picked up on a seasoned practice quality in how I delivered that 8 Extremes Fist. Little did he know, it was because the technique itself was out there, slaying beasts and feeding genuine combat data right into me. Just then, Elder Chien rose to his feet. He noted the time on the wall clock and uttered 3 words. Our time is up. Let's move. As the group queued up, I took my spot right behind Hu Linfeng. Jin Hongguang fell in right after Elder Chien. Right before heading out, Elder Chien glanced back at me, warning me to stick close to my master and avoid straying. Hu Linfeng's face twitched for a mere split second, the moment Elder Chien gave that warning, revealing a glimpse of malice in his eyes. Yet it vanished instantly when Elder Chien turned to look at him. Elder Chien approached the cell's entrance and rested his hand gently on the handle. The door just glided open all by itself. No keys required, not a single guard in sight. The heavy padlock that used to secure the exterior had somehow been unfastened from the inside. I just gaped in utter disbelief. If he had that power, this cell was never actually holding him captive. He could have walked free at any given moment. So why on earth was he staying? What kind of thing could force a man this ridiculously strong? Behind bars by choice? Elder Chin guided us out of the cell and straight down the hallway. It was 8 p.m., meaning every other inmate was locked down tight. Yet we strolled casually through the corridors, as if we owned the whole place. Once we arrived at the primary security checkpoint, Elder Chien walked right up to the facial recognition scanner. It let out a chime and read, "Access granted." And just like that, the electronic lock disengaged. The massive iron barrier swung wide open. I honestly couldn't process what I was witnessing. A literal inmate bypassing the facility's secure gates, fully authorized with his own face registered right in their network. Leaning over, I muttered to Hu Li Yinfeng, demanding to know why we were even bothering to stay, if escaping was this much of a breeze. He just smirked and pointed out that the physical prison walls weren't what kept them inside. Folks back then were real powerhouses. Elite martial artists on the outside made sure sentences were served. Anyone trying to make a run for it would end up dropping dead on the streets by the very next day. Your only ticket out was earning it through merit. And that's exactly what the rift was for. He laid it all out for me as we walked along. Ever since spiritual energy manifested on Blue Star, spatial fractures began tearing open all over. These rifts served as gateways to an alternate dimension, teeming with monstrosities known as demon beasts. Our sole gig was to head inside and slaughter them, stopping them dead from invading our own world. For every single Tier 1 beast you took down, you knock a full day off your prison sentence. Tier 2 beasts were worth 2 days, and so on down the line. Looking at my own 15-year stretch, if I managed to bag one Tier 1 beast every single day, I could theoretically get out in roughly 7 years. I asked him if Tier 1 beasts were easy pickings. Hu Linfeng just shook his head at that. He told me that even the absolute weakest, unranked creatures were way out of my league right now. Tier 1 beasts, see, actually match up directly with body-tempering cultivators. And we're not talking weaklings here. Most Tier 1 monsters can easily go toe-to-toe with someone at major achievement within the body-tempering stage. The nastier ones require a postnatal warrior to handle, while Li Yinfeng himself, even at major achievement, in the postnatal stage, only dares to hunt Tier 1 beasts. He wouldn't dream of risking a fight with a Tier 2. Right then, Zhang Hongwang called him out directly from the driver's seat, claiming that Hu Linfeng's real issue was just his sloppy combat techniques, not his cultivation realm. An ordinary postnatal warrior could totally manage Tier 2 beasts, which Li Yinfeng immediately countered by asking if Zhang Hongwang would even have the guts to fight one, a tectonic splitter beast, the absolute king of Tier 2 monsters. Zhang Hongwang went completely silent after that. Just outside the penitentiary, watchtowers loomed along the high walls. The guards on duty spotted us, but they instantly looked the other way, acting like we weren't even there. A black van was idling right by the entrance. Zhang Hongwang hopped into the driver's seat. Wu Linfeng gestured for me to take the back. I froze for a second. The back seat is usually reserved for the veterans, but Elder Qian snapped at us to stop dragging our feet. So I scrambled inside as Zhang Hongwang floored it. The raw acceleration slammed me back, and in the blink of an eye, we cruised right through the prison gates, without a single soul stopping us. While driving, I questioned Wu Linfeng about why he claimed he'd never get out, especially if slaying beasts shaved off prison time. Zhang Hongwang cut in to answer for him. He broke it down. My master had completely annihilated a minor clan, over 30 lives, and copped a life sentence. Even with the Federation lacking a death penalty, his body count would have gotten him executed, hundreds of times over. He still had more than 9 centuries left on his term, slaying 10 Tier 2 beasts every single day. For the rest of his days, wouldn't even dent it. Zhang Hongwang wasn't doing much better either. He'd whacked 8 people to avenge his wife, leaving him with over 300 years to clock. I asked why they even bothered, putting it all on the line in the rift, if buying their freedom was completely off the table. Wu Linfeng replied that hunting monsters also paid out. Merit points redeemable for training assets. If he could just advance to the innate stage, perhaps. Yeah, maybe there'd be some other way out. He cast a glance at Elder Qian as he spoke, before falling silent. I also checked out Elder Qian. If Wu Linfeng reckoned hitting innate would flip the script, and Elder Qian was clearly miles ahead of anyone else in our cell, then the old man had to be an innate master already. Probably higher. No one uttered a word after that. The vibe in the vehicle got pretty heavy. We kept driving all the way down to the shore. Once the van ground to a halt, I peered out the window at the boundless sea, spanning out to the horizon. So where was this rift? I couldn't spot a thing. We piled out of the van onto a lonely beach, and Elder Qian guided us into the coastal peaks. Same setup as earlier, him taking the lead, followed by Zhang Hongwang. Then Hu Linfeng with me covering the rear. Deep within the woods, heavily armed troops in full gear, abruptly closing on us. One soldier leveled his rifle at us and demanded our identification. Elder Qian replied without missing a beat. First prison, Xianzhonal, deploying a squad into the rift. That was actually my first time hearing his full name. Qian Tianlong, it definitely fit him. They asked for the password, and he gave it. The soldiers melted back into the brush so quickly, I couldn't even tell where they were staging. We pressed further into the dense jungle, and our speed just kept picking up. Between all the brambles and thick brush, I was totally draining my energy. Good thing I'd stepped onto the martial path, but my physical form was still just that of a regular guy. I hadn't even begun body tempering yet. I started lagging behind, which Li Yinfeng caught onto. He yanked me up by the back of my collar, and all of a sudden, I felt light as a feather, pretty much gliding straight through the trees. After a couple more minutes, the woods cleared out onto a steep cliff face over the ocean. Everyone ahead of me just leapt off without a second thought. First came Elder Chien, then Zhang Hongguang, and then Huli Yinfeng. I stepped up to the edge and peeked down. It wasn't some endless abyss below. Right underneath was this massive black tear in midair, roughly the size of a massive semi-truck. Little fractures radiated outward from it, with a glowing violet orb pulsating right at its center. So this was the rift. I grit my teeth and took the plunge. The wind came howling past my ears, and the tears swallowed me right up. A brutal wave of vertigo hit me, and my body began spinning out of control, dragged along by some unseen force. Then it all stopped. I opened my eyes to total darkness. We were standing out on a wide-open meadow. It felt pretty damn close to Blue Star. Only there wasn't a moon, just an inky black void, save for the dim lights of a campsite about 100 meters off. Elder Chien mentioned we'd head to the base, to gear up with weapons first, then make our way to a canyon. I tagged along, tossing questions at Yinfeng. As we walked, he explained that the drop zone was completely randomized, usually within 100 meters of the base. They deliberately placed the outpost at a distance, so newcomers wouldn't slam into each other or get skewered by someone else's blade. The surrounding grounds had been cleared of beasts a long time ago, with daily sweeps keeping the place secure. Still, I couldn't help but notice that guards here were way more relaxed than back on Blue Star. Hu Linfeng actually made a lot of sense. All that heavy security back at the cliff was just to keep civilians from wandering in, and to stop those monsters from crossing over to our side. But down here in the rift, every single soul who made it through was a fighter. So the sentries only needed to double-check that you weren't a beast. The entire camp was packed with tents, lining both sides of a massive thoroughfare, with people carrying all sorts of weapons weaving through them. Elder Chien and Zhang Hongguang kept heading straight, but Hu Linfeng pulled up short and told me we had to take a quick detour. He mentioned I needed to sign up as a demon slayer, the mandatory credentials for operating within the Rift world. Without that tag, any monsters I put down wouldn't count toward cutting down my prison sentence, and I wouldn't be allowed to gear up from the armory. He broke it down for me. The Demon Slayer title was way more than just a simple pass. The more beasts you slaughtered, and the more glory you racked up, the higher your social standing climbed. The elite, top-tier Demon Slayers basically answered to no one in the Blue Star Federation. That's exactly why the guards treated the guys in Cell 1 with actual respect. Sure, we were convicts, but we were also Demon Slayers, holding down the absolute front lines. And if a guy managed to drop enough monsters, he could get his entire criminal record wiped clean, score a fresh identity, and even become a Federation senator. All it took was the raw power to seize it. So I tagged along behind Hu Linfeng, heading toward a drab tent on the left side of the path. Stepping inside the gray tent, a young clerk clad in a blue uniform was processing the sign-ups. Hu Linfeng nudged me to give him my name and ID number, and the staffer quickly punched the data into his system, before glancing up at me in total shock. "You're just an average guy." But Li Yinfeng cut right in, explaining, "He's my apprentice, so I'm bringing him along." With that, he fished a silver token out of his pocket, his official Demon Slayer badge. The attendant scanned the piece and verified it. Silver-ranked Demon Slayer. Postnatal Major Achievement Stage. Fully authorized to bring a companion for beast hunting. Still, he cautioned us to avoid the canyon, warning that second-tier beasts infested the area. Then Li Yinfeng chimed in, noting that a gold-ranked Slayer was also on our team. Hearing that, the worker finally let the matter drop. He pulled a black medallion from a drawer, logged it into the system, and set it on the desk. "Congrats there, Wu Dao. You're officially a Black Iron Demon Slayer." He laid out the rules. 1 point for every first-tier beast, 2 points for a second tier, and so forth. It takes 10,000 points to make bronze rank. Since I was a convict with 15 years remaining, I needed exactly 5,475 points to wipe my record clean. The badge had a tracking mechanism inside, meaning every single kill was recorded automatically. No badge on you, no rewards for you. I pinned the black token straight to my chest, slaughtering over 5,000 first-tier monsters, or roughly half that amount in second-tier ones. Was no small feat once outside the tent. I questioned Li Yinfeng about how he was faring. He let out a sigh, admitting that in 6 years of lockup, he had barely scraped together 40,000 points. Not even close to hitting gold rank yet. At that rate, he was looking at another 50 years for freedom, and he doubted he'd survive that long anyway. His solitary shot at surviving was breaching the innate realm just to stretch his lifespan. Then I brought up Elder Chien, who Li Yinfeng claimed the specifics were classified, If Elder Chien wanted me to know, he'd spill the beans himself. All he dropped was that Elder Chien's rap sheet carried over twice his. And Zhang Hongquan's sentences put together. Mind you, Elder Chien slaughtered beasts fast, and he was right on the verge of hitting gold rank. That meant he'd stacked up somewhere around 8 to 900,000 points. Yet, despite that, he still hadn't cleared his time. I couldn't fathom what kind of crime could warrant such a massive penalty. Now, Zhang Hongguang, by contrast, had only been stationed here for 6 months. But, being at peak postnatal, he could take down roughly 20 Tier 2 beasts daily. He'd already accumulated close to 8,000 points. At that pace, he'd walk free in roughly a decade. Oh, and Li Yinfeng mentioned that cell number 1 used to hold a larger crew. A few earned their discharge, while others perished in a rift. We pulled up to a massive tent, the armory. Then, Li Yinfeng told me to hang tight outside. Renting even the cheapest blade required 1 point, and I was completely broke. He headed inside and returned wielding a massive saber. I questioned him on why nobody utilized firearms. It seemed obvious. Even monsters are made of flesh and blood, so hot lead should do the trick. He chuckled and gestured for me to take a look around. I surveyed the encampment. He was spot on. Not a single soul was packing a gun, save for the tower watchman. He clarified that gunfire just draws the monsters in. The rift swarmed with thousands upon thousands of beasts. A single shot would bring a whole horde down on you. The Federation actually tested out firearms back when the rift was newly uncovered, but the body count was absolutely horrific. Ever since, it's been strictly melee weapons, blades, spears, and fists. Those tower guards carried firearms strictly for base security, not for game hunting. I trailed behind him across the base, heading toward the spot where Elder Chien and Zhang Hongquang were holding down the fort. Just past the base, a massive parking lot opened up, packed with hundreds of different rides. Elder Chien was standing by, gripping a long spear. Zhang Guang wielded a curved blade, while Li Yinfeng held his saber. They tossed the gear into the back, but the trunk wouldn't latch, so they just left it unzipped, and we all piled into a gray van. Li Yinfeng snatched a tablet out of the glove box and began barking out navigation as Zhang Hongguang took the wheel. Right then it clicked why Li Yinfeng had made me take the back seat. Back on Blue Star, this was just how they rolled. Zhang Hongguang acted as the driver. Hu Lin Feng navigated and kept an eye out for threats. And Elder Chien anchored the squad from the back row. Eyes shut, completely prepped for any action. As we rolled out, a mental alert pinged in my head. The 8 Extremes fist had officially hit entry level. Barely an hour after I first picked it up, the raw combat experience packed into the style, clashing with beasts on its own accord, really accelerated the grind. The second it leveled up, a massive wave of profound insight flooded my mind, almost as if an absolute master was personally passing down the style's deepest secrets. Pulling up my status bar, Realm EXP sat right at 450, while the Northern Darkness Divine Art showed 2,500 mastery points in its initial phase. In roughly 3 hours, I'd break through straight into the body tempering realm, and the Divine Art would advance to minor achievement status. This pacing was insanely hype, yet honestly terrifying, considering 3 seasoned martial artists were chilling right next to me. Produce. If they caught on that something bizarre was brewing, things could get ugly real fast. An involuntary sigh escaped my lips, which Li Yinfeng picked up on, asking what was up. I covered it up by claiming I was just dwelling on how Jin Shan screwed me over. That ended up sparking a totally unexpected conversation. The moment I dropped the bomb that I was Jin Shan's bastard son, a sudden silence fell over the entire car. Even Elder Chien opened his eyes to cast a glance my way. Zhang Hongguang questioned why my own flesh and blood would set me up. So I laid out the whole story about how Mingyuan killed a person in a hit and run, how they capitalized on my striking resemblance to him, and how they meticulously fabricated every shred of evidence. Zhang Hongguang remarked on how sickening it was, but Hu Yinfeng chimed in with some background I'd been completely blind to. He mentioned that Haipeng, the head of the clan, had always despised Junshan for being completely worthless. To safeguard the dynasty's future, he orchestrated a strategic marriage between Jin Shan and the third daughter of the Leaf family. The patriarch of the Leaf clan, Li Yaozu, was an innate level master of martial arts. This alliance was essentially Haipeng, tethering his weak bloodline to a powerhouse. Consequently, Jin Shan was totally whipped by his wife. Zhang Hongguang began piecing it together. He figured this entire plot to frame me was highly likely the brainchild of Jin Shan's wife, that woman from the Li family. Since Jin Shan was such a spineless coward, he'd never take the gamble of, dragging a secret son into the light on his own whim. His wife bound to have caught wind of my existence, and decided to treat me like a throwaway pawn. Then, Zhang Hongwang dropped a line that hit way too close to home. "Kid, this score of yours is going to be brutal to settle." He went on to clarify that getting even wasn't just about taking on the Yi clan. It meant locking horns with the Li clan as well. And the Li family had a genuine innate level grandmaster calling the shots. So just reaching the baseline innate tier wouldn't cut it. I'd likely need to hit the minor success stage in the innate realm to stand a real chance. He just scoffed when I brought up reaching the innate rank, muttering that if it were that simple, he wouldn't still be trapped at peak postnatal, well into his 40s. I stared straight ahead and countered, "As long as I'm breathing, I will settle this score." The car went dead silent. Elder Chien shot me a sharp, skeptical look, but kept quiet. We kept driving for a few more minutes, until Zhang Hongwang slammed on the brakes. Hu Linfeng warned that we'd have to hoof it from here. The rumble of the engine and the bright headlights would definitely alert the beasts lurking in the canyon. The three of them grabbed their gear from the trunk. Elder Chien ordered me to trail behind them and keep watch from the top of the ridge, overlooking the entire ravine. No matter what happened, I was not to go down there. Right after that, he shot forward like an arrow. The force of his kickoff literally cracked the ground beneath him. Zhang Hongwang blurred right after him at a similar pace. Hu Linfeng gave me one final glance before blitzing after the duo. Their pace was insane, moving every bit as fast as cars tearing down a highway. I stared down at the footprints they left in the dirt. Deep, heavy tracks with fractures spreading outward, and then bolted after them at absolute full throttle. After a minute or two, the sounds hit me, fierce shouts, clashing battle cries, and primal roars echoing from the basin. Reaching the edge of the drop-off, I froze. They had called this a slope, but it was practically a sheer, vertical precipice, with barely any slant to it at all. There was no way I could scale down even if I wanted to. Down below, giant floodlights illuminated the canyon floor. Scores of human warriors wielding hand-to-hand weapons were locked in a brutal clash with beasts, monsters I'd never laid eyes on before. A few resembled wolves, though way bigger than tigers. Others looked like sheep with elongated, razor-sharp horns. There were boar-like creatures, covered in dense, protective armor plates, and even weirder entities I couldn't begin to describe. None of them looked like the humanoid fiends I'd envisioned from video games. They were just animals, only freakishly massive and aggressive. I couldn't quite make out Li Yinfeng or Zhang Hongwang in all the chaos. There were just too many blade-wielding fighters. But Elder Chien, I spotted him instantly. He was the sole warrior using a spear, and he wasn't sticking with the rest of the humans. Instead, he'd solo-charged right into a pack of monsters. More than a dozen beasts hemmed him in, yet none could break through. His spear was a blur, thrusting, slashing, and piercing. Every couple of seconds, another creature dropped dead. At one point, he launched himself 7 or 8 meters into the air. Right then, I caught sight of a pale luminescence coating his spearhead. That's when I recalled Hu Linfeng's teachings. Body tempering refines the physical form. Postnatal refines raw force. And innate refines internal energy. That radiance had to be Qi, the signature power of the innate realm. I just stood there tracking the fight, utterly spellbound. Suddenly, a gruff voice echoed right behind me. "Hey kid, what do you think? You're doing loitering here." I whipped around, for figures were marching straight toward me. 3 middle-aged guys and an older woman. Each of them carried identical styles of broadswords. My stomach plummeted. Hu Linfeng had given me a strict warning about folks carrying identical blades in the gorge. Meant they were from some clan or sect, and crews like that wouldn't blink at murder. I claimed I was just waiting on my master, so they demanded to know who he was. Ito Amungria Li Yinfeng, thinking his name would make them back off. Totally backfired. The leader's eyes narrowed, and he let out this nasty, cold laugh. "Hu Li Yinfeng, that worthless dog? And you're his pupil?" He spat. Turns out Hu Li Yinfeng had slain his junior brother and stolen their clan's prized possession, the secret sword manual of the Four-Blade sect. They'd been craving payback for ages, but lacked the muscle to take on Hu Li Yinfeng directly. Yet right now, his apprentice was standing here, solo and helpless. He called it a straight-up blessing from above, vowing to slaughter me as a tribute to his late brother. I cursed my rotten luck. I dropped Hu Li Yinfeng's name to stay safe, but just painted a massive bullseye on me instead. These four were likely at minor achievement, postnatal level tops, way too weak to face Hu Linfeng, but easily lethal enough for a nobody like me. I only had one real move, shouting at the top of my lungs, "Let's go!" The exact second they braced for an attack, I spun around and bolted right toward the edge of the precipice, dropping straight down into that monster-infested canyon. I knew taking on those four guys was impossible, and outrunning them was out of the question too. Even the most basic martial artist could easily outpace a regular civilian. Like me, my lone shot was reaching the canyon floor, where Hu Lianfeng and his crew might spot me. The moment I stepped over the edge, I dashed for the incline. I completely lost my footing. The drop-off was pretty much straight down. I pitched forward and went into a tailspin, battering against boulders and dirt over and over. Everything was spinning, and agony flared up everywhere. Then I just blacked out. Later on, I learned what went down while I was out cold. The four-bladed sect didn't come after me. Their leader, that old matriarch, ordered them a halt. She said any ordinary person tumbling from that height would die, for sure, and they couldn't risk having the infant catch up to them. So, they just vanished into the darkness. My plunge caught the eye of the warriors below. Linfeng noticed a convict's garb, hurtling down the precipice, and instantly disengaged from the armored boar he was taking on. He yelled my name and bolted straight toward the bank. Elder Qin moved even quicker. He slammed his foot down, launching himself skyward, then somehow bounded off thin air and soared across, over 100 meters to grab me at the bottom. When Elder Qin examined my body, the harm was severe. I was completely unresponsive, had numerous fractures, ruptured blood vessels, and several ruptured meridians. He pressed his palm to my back, channeling a pale vapor, his own qi into my body. I came to an absolute agony. Every single inch of me throbbed so intensely I could barely talk. I filled Linfeng in on what went down. The four-bladed sect, their beef with him, and how they'd pin me down. His expression darkened with fury as he clutched his blade, dead set on hunting them down. Elder Qin stopped him cold with just a single word. You created foes, so your follower paid the price. That's just how the game goes, he remarked. He mentioned my wounds would take a solid 2 or 3 months to mend, and directed Hu Lianfeng along with Zhang Hongguang to haul me back to the base's medical infirmary. Zhang Hongguang scooped me up with extreme care and leaped right up that nearly vertical cliffside, as if it were a flight of stairs while taking me away. I missed whatever Elder Qin whispered to Hu Linfeng in private, but the details reached me much later on. Elder Qin had straight up told him that he was fully aware. Linfeng intended to exploit me as a human cauldron, just to siphon off my inner cultivation. He pointed out that even if the plan succeeded, Hu Linfeng would merely advance from major achievement to the peak of postnatal level, which still wasn't enough to break out of this prison, or exact retribution on any of his targets. Elder Qin proposed an alternative route. Let me develop considering my potential was genuine. If I grew powerful enough, I could handle Hu Linfeng's settling of scores on his behalf instead. He additionally cautioned Hu Linfeng that I likely already grasped exactly what the Northern Darkness, divine art, was truly capable of. Hu Lianfeng didn't offer a response right then. He told Elder Qin he would weigh the option thoroughly, and then headed over to check my condition. Elder Qin tracked his exit, gave a slow nod of disapproval, and muttered a few words concerning a twisted destiny. Then he spun right back around toward the bee swarm. He had his own score to settle out in the real world, and at his current rate, he'd gain his freedom in 2 or 3 years. He couldn't manage to squander even a single evening. I remained stretched out on a cot inside the camp's clinic, while a physician patched me up for a grueling 2 hours. The final tally: 3 fractured ribs, a snapped leg bone, 2 busted hand bones, and deep lacerations all over, some severe enough to expose the raw meat underneath. They aligned my bones and put me in a cast, wrapping me up completely from head to toe, until I looked just like a mummy. The doc informed Hu Lianfeng that I was stuck in bed for 2 months, and couldn't train in any combat styles, though I could still practice internal cultivation to accelerate my recovery. Right back out to hunt monsters, while he rolled my bed out of the camp, and toward the exit portal. I asked where we were heading, and he told me that the route back to Blue Star was entirely different from the way in. It was a completely separate rift, situated by a little pond just outside the camp. So I asked why the camp wasn't set up right next to the rift. He explained that the spatial tear was volatile, constantly shrinking and expanding without warning, sometimes growing so massive it could engulf everything around it. Keeping the camp far back was just a precaution, protecting them from the rift itself, as well as sudden monster raids. On the way, I kept hitting him with more questions. I had spotted other convicts battling in the canyon, and wanted to know why we hadn't crossed paths with them when leaving the prison. He said that Haiqing holds over 10 prisons, most of which have blocks like ours for martial artists. However, cell number 1 at our facility had a special perk. We got to leave at 8 o'clock, an hour ahead of everyone else. The rest of the inmates from our prison were merely at the body tempering phase, meaning they stuck to safer zones to hunt, avoiding the canyon where second-tier beasts roamed. Then I asked why we only came out at night. He told me that during the day, the monsters would abandon their dens to forage for food, scattering all over the place. Way too risky after dark. Those massive floodlights in the canyon fooled the beasts into thinking it was daytime, luring them into a single spot, so hunters could take them down easily. I asked why we even bothered killing them, if we could just block them from invading. Blue Stars Hu Liangfeng just laughed. Monster meat boosts a person's blood and vitality, while their hides and bones make great medicine. Plus, this rift world was packed with rare, spiritual herbs that supercharge cultivation. The Federation wasn't dumping resources into this. Out of kindness, there was serious cash in it. Even so, humanity hadn't even explored 1/10,000th of this rift world yet. Our sector was just the outer edge, the safest spot. He mentioned that a squad of Grandmaster-level elite fighters once attempted to venture deeper into the rift, and they returned with 2 dead and 8 mangled. Grandmasters, the absolute strongest on Blue Star, were nearly wiped out. Just try to explore further inside. This world was way creepier than I'd imagined. I inquired about the monster meat and meds, and he said everything was strictly locked down. You could buy them using points, or get them through martial arts academies. The Federation was investing heavily to breed martial talent, and anyone showing real promise got snatched up by an academy. If I managed to get paroled early, I should enroll. Academies had cultivation supplies, secret techniques, and skills. It was way easier than grinding for points. In the rift, Urijalit Yi Vinshan, telling me that Yi Min Yuan had scored a spot in a martial arts academy. Doing time was literally all for that, just to safeguard his future dojo. Upon making my exit, I muttered to myself that I'd head over there, not as some fall guy taking the rap, but entirely on my own terms. Then, Linfeng wheeled my cot down a walkway, stretching over the water, heading straight toward the return rift. That classic vertigo hit hard as everything spun. I was heading back to Blue Star. My initial run into the rift world was a total bust, yet even covered in gauze and plaster, stuck flat on a gurney. I felt a spark I hadn't known in months, pure intrigue and a craving for more. Glancing back one last time at the gloomy realm, I swore that the second I bounced back, I'd return. Once we crossed the threshold, back on a Blue Star, we ended up on the wrong side of the shoreline, way out from our ride. Hu Linfeng attempted to roll my gurney through the sand, but those tiny casters bogged down instantly. With a sigh, he scooped me up and tracked forward. He moved swiftly but smoothly. I barely felt a bump. Moonbeams pierced right through the overcast, coating us both in a silvery glow. For a brief spell, we both stayed quiet, gazing up at the night sky. I replayed everything that had gone down. Then he dropped a question that completely chilled me. Do you actually know what the Northern Darkness, divine art entails? I went rigid. Had I slipped up? I seriously doubted it. But before I could figure out a good lie, he kept talking. He noted that the advanced stages of the style were dead obvious the moment I cleared the basics, and could actually make sense of the text. Honestly, it'd be weird if I hadn't caught on. He told me to just lay out the truth, even if I knew what was up. He wasn't about to make a move on me just yet, so I spilled it. I quoted the main lines back to him, regarding drawing in another person's inner vital energy, and gathering it inside your own body, much like the vast northern sea, plus the caveats to never siphon from anyone more powerful, and never drain anyone, using a conflicting discipline. Otherwise, both frameworks would fail, and completely wreck your meridians. I admitted that the second I saw those caveats, I realized exactly what he had in store for me. My mom used to tell me that nobody shows random kindness to a stranger for no reason. He went completely quiet for a second, then grinned. He admitted he was quite impressed. Those cautionary phrases were buried deep in the technical stanzas, and back when he first picked up the craft, he hadn't grasped a single thing until his own master spelled it out. He mentioned Elder Chien was spot on about me having true talent. That's when the pieces clicked. Elder Chien had a quiet word with him right after I was taken away. Then Li Yinfeng cut straight to the chase. He noted Elder Chin left the final call entirely up to him, so he was putting it to me bluntly. I gave it to him straight, too. I appreciated everything he'd taught me, but I had a blood feud to settle. If his plan was to use me as a cultivation furnace, I wouldn't just take it lying down. He gave a nod, and then he put all his cards on the table. He confessed that his initial plan was to siphoning my energy the moment I reached minor postnatal stage. But Elder Chien made him realize that, even if he pulled it off, he'd only hit peak postnatal. That wouldn't bust him out of jail, nor would it be enough to get even. The guy was already past 70, and a postnatal martial artist tops out at around a century. He'd run out of time, so he completely flipped the script. Instead of wiping me out, he wanted me to exact his vengeance. Turns out his real target wasn't some minor nobody. That was just a cover story. The person he's actually after is Zhang Yuanlin, from the most dominant clan in Haicheng. Back in the day, right after advancing to major postnatal achievement, he accidentally crossed paths with this guy, Zhang Yuanlin. To settle the score, Zhang Yuanlin brutally murdered Hu Linfeng's entire family. 6 lives taken. To retaliate, Hu Linfeng slaughtered 30 relatives on Zhang Yuanlin's wife's side, and then surrendered to the authorities. Lockup was the sole spot where the Zhang clan couldn't touch him, since the penitentiary links directly to the Rift World, and remains guarded by Grandmaster tier warriors. Zhang Yuanlin himself was just a minor postnatal weakling. The real powerhouse was his old man, Zhang Jinya, a major innate master. In the whole city of Haicheng, only the Demon Slayer commander holds a higher rank. Literally everyone else clears the way when Zhang Jinya passes. Then Hu Linfeng dropped a truth bomb about Elder Chien. That completely blew my mind. El Chien, au Xiantiano, was actually thrown behind bars by Zhang Jinya too. Xiantiano once fronted the notorious Green Dragon Gang, the heaviest hitters in Haicheng. As a minor achievement, innate warrior, he had enough clout to run the whole town. But Zhang Jinya hit major achievement status way quicker and totally wrecked him, wiping out the gang's entire empire. Hu Linfeng mentioned that if I managed to win Elder Chien's backing, and not just his passing curiosity, we'd actually have a shot at payback. But as of now, the Elder only found me slightly interesting. Getting him fully on board demanded way more than what I had pulled off. I was completely floored. Elder Chien and Hu Linfeng targeted the same guy. The Zhang family, the ultimate powerhouse in Haicheng, ruled by major achievement innate warrior Zhang Jinya. If Elder Chien at minor achievement, innate got totally broken by this dude. How could I even take him on? Hu Linfeng caught my silence and asked if I was spooked. He said backing out was totally cool, since we were keeping it real, and he wouldn't hold a grudge against me. He'd be fine with me just taking out Zhang Yuanlin whenever the chance popped up. I told him I wasn't scared. I was just calculating exactly how long it would take to reach major achievement innate. He cracked up. I promised to deliver on that, and told him to keep breathing until the victory news arrived. He joked that my hit list was getting pretty crowded. The Yi clan, the Li clan, and now the Zhang family. That's 3 of the top 10 dynasties in Haicheng. He told me not to sweat it and just take it one step at a time. I went along with it, but deep down, I knew my system had my back. It was just a matter of time. Our vibe completely shifted after that chat. That wall of distrust just melted away. You could totally feel it, like a massive weight off both our shoulders. For the rest of the ride, he did all the talking while I just listened. He schooled me on the major sects and factions running the martial underworld, including the Four-Blade sect, the very crew that almost punched my ticket. Turns out their heaviest hitter was that old crone, their big boss, and she was barely at the entry postnatal stage. Not even a real threat. The whole beef kicked off because Hu Linfeng dropped 2 mil on one of their guys to score their classified cultivation manual. The dude pocketed the cash, but stiffed him on the actual text. So, Hu Linfeng ended him and snatched it anyway. That's how bad blood works in this world. Cash, body counts, and stolen arts. I made a mental note right then. Once I break out of prison, the Four-Blade sect is going to be my very first stop. He also filled me in on the Demon Slayer commanders. It's not just a single guy, but an elite squad of Grandmaster tier fighters who cycle through different cities every year to keep a lid on the rifts. These spatial fractures have been popping up all over Blue Star, multiplying with every passing year. That's exactly why the Federation is pushing martial arts development so aggressively right now. Word on the street was that 10 Grandmasters once ventured deep inside the Rift Dimension and ran into entities way above their pay grade. That clash might have tipped off humanity's presence to whatever is lurking on the other side. If those beasts ever decide to launch an invasion on Blue Star, we're looking at total annihilation. I asked what kind of power lies beyond the Grandmaster tier. He couldn't say for sure, having only spotted a mention in some ancient scroll about a thing called Martial Dao's Golden Core, though he doubted if that was its true title. We managed to get back to the cells by 10 o'clock, since the portal stayed open only from 8 p.m. until 6 a.m. So, It made zero sense for Fin to head back out. Instead, he chilled in the cell with me, lying on the cot, completely wrapped up in bandages. I pulled up my system interface. In the hour or so since my last look, the Northern Darkness. Divine Art had racked up another 3,500 mastery points, bringing my cultivation experience to 790, just about ready to break through to body tempering. Meanwhile, 8 Extremes Fist sat at 1,800 mastery, while Mountain Collapse Fist lagged behind at a mere 1,900. Time for a little pep talk. Mountain Collapse Fist. You're slacking off. Luckily, the trick worked. The technique got all fired up, surging at a rate of 20 points per minute. Next, I focused on 8 Extremes Fist, the sole skill I hadn't fully maxed out yet. 8 Extremes Fist. Take a look at Mountain Collapse Fist. It hasn't even hit beginner status. It's already gaining on you. The skill spiked instantly to 40 points a minute, and right away, it picked a fight with a Tier 1 beast to snag an extra 50-point bonus. By now, all 3 of my arts have been provoked twice. That's the absolute safe threshold. Driving any of them a third time would trigger that risky state of cultivation deviation, just like the Northern Darkness. Divine Art had almost done earlier. Knowing when to back off mattered just as much as knowing when to grind. I'd truly taken it to heart. Barely an hour later, it went down. My cultivation experience finally hit 1,000. A wave of warmth flooded up from my gut and rushed straight through my entire body. My muscles began to shudder, not out of nowhere, but in a steady rhythm. My chest was pounding, like my heart wanted to burst right out. Then, a sudden heat flushed across my skin, and sweat completely drenched the dressings in seconds. Beneath the cloth, my cuts began to itch like crazy, and I could actually feel something knitting, right where the bones had snapped, almost as if they were fusing back together. I began gasping for air, desperate to cool down. Hearing me struggle, Huli Infong bolted out of bed. Hurrying over, he figured my injuries had taken a turn for the worse. But after staring at me for a moment, he froze, muttering, "You're advancing to body tempering." He knew the symptoms well, the twitching muscles, the heavy sweat, the burning heat. He'd experienced it firsthand decades ago. What really blew his mind was that I was doing it, while flat on my back, covered in medical wraps. He ripped right through the gauze covering my chest, checked my pulse, and verified it. I was actually leveling up, leaving him totally stunned. From the exact moment he first taught me the Northern Darkness, Divine Art, until this very second, barely 4 hours had passed. Honestly, it took him a whole month to reach that identical milestone. Even the most gifted prodigy he'd ever crossed paths with still required 3 full days. Yet I'd pulled it off in a mere fraction of that. Once the fever broke and I opened my eyes, the very first thing I tried was moving my left arm, the one with the nastiest break. Just hours back, it was completely paralyzed. Now, I lifted it up feeling only a bit stiff. Glancing down at the shredded bandages, those deep, bloody gashes that had looked so raw had already formed solid scabs. My busted ribs weren't bothering me anymore, though my right shin and left forearm were still throbbing. Still, the agony was nothing compared to before. Ungria Li Yimfeng inquired if I'd noticed anything strange while cultivating. I just shook my head. He took a seat on the mattress next to mine and clued me in on some things I didn't know. He mentioned that in the martial arts world, Talis existith, of folks born with what's called a sacred martial physique, a build that made training as effortless as taking a breath. These prodigies could pull off in minutes what usually takes normal practitioners years. The quickest prodigy he'd ever crossed paths with needed 3 whole days to attain body tempering. Yet, I pulled it off in 3 hours. He wondered if I might possess this sacred martial physique. I had to stifle a laugh. It wasn't some special body. It was just my system putting in the work while I chilled there. Honestly, though, this worked out perfectly. If everyone bought into the idea of me having a legendary build, then no matter how insanely fast I leveled up, it would just seem normal. So I played along. I claimed that nothing felt out of the ordinary, except that once I grasped the technique, a warm energy just started circulating through me on its own, almost like it was on autopilot. I laid out exactly what the system was doing, just phrasing it differently, so he could connect the dots with whatever logic made sense to him. Huliyin Phone gripped my wrist to see for himself. He froze. He could actually feel it, a faint stream of energy, independently traveling through my pathways, without me even meditating or trying at all. Typically, inner chi only flows when you're actively training. The rest of the time, it just stays parked in the dantian. Whatever was going on inside me shattered every rule he lived by. He asked me when it first started. I played clueless and claimed it had always been like that. He passed down the technique to me. He just gawked at me. mumbling something about the legendary sacred martial body, some mythical physical constitution that turned cultivation into a total breeze. Then he told me he need Elder Chien to check me out once he got back, given that Elder Chien had way more experience. Roughly 30 minutes later, the Northern Darkness Divine Art officially hit minor attainment. The system alert informed me that proficiency had skyrocketed to 80 points per minute, and realm experience bumped up to 8 per minute. A massive surge of warm energy flooded right through my body, far denser and way more potent than before. As it pulled back down into my dantian, the sensation felt so incredibly good that I accidentally let out a soft groan. Hu Ling caught the sound and whipped around. He spotted faint wisps of energy radiating from my skin, a telltale sign he picked up on instantly. It was exactly what happens when the Northern Darkness Divine Art successfully advances to minor attainment, and your meridians can't quite contain the upgraded power. Minor attainment already? He muttered. 5 hours. That's all the time it took from learning the basics to hitting the minor attainment level. He'd spent half his life training hard and had only managed to reach major attainment. I could literally see in his eyes that something inside the guy was snapping. His ego, most likely, or his entire grasp of what was even possible. He inquired if my martial arts skills also leveled up on autopilot. I figured it was time to commit 100% to the Boy Genius Act. So I gave a nod and mentioned that fresh combat insights would just pop up in my head out of nowhere. It was like the moves were practicing on their own. He wanted me to show him the 8 extremes. Fist right then and there, but stopped himself when he spotted my casts. Instead, he told me to take it easy. Then, staring up at the ceiling, he began conversing with his late master, wondering aloud if this was some sort of divine miracle. I let him know I was exhausted and needed some sleep. Seriously, it had been the longest day ever. Moved to a prison, triggered the system, got taken in as a student, hit the rift world, and nearly bit it, tumbling off a cliff. All before breaking through to body tempering. And that was just day 1. I shut my eyes and passed out. Cold. Next thing I knew, Hu Lianfeng was calling my name. 3 guys were looking down at me. Hu Lianfeng seemed totally stressed. Zhang Hongguang looked completely hooked, and Elder Chien had his hand on my wrist, frowning deeply. Bizarre. Extremely bizarre, Elder Chien muttered. His cultivation keeps cycling even while he sleeps. His physical form is being constantly buffed by his internal energy. I've never run into anything like this in my entire life. Hu Lianfeng pressed him, asking if I possessed the sacred martial body. Elder Chien just shook his head, admitting he'd never actually encountered one. The sacred martial body was strictly the stuff of old lore and myths. According to those myths, a person could master styles effortlessly and level up way faster than average. But there was no mention of skills running on autopilot. My situation was something he'd never even heard of, much less witnessed. Then he asked me whether I experienced any pain during my training sessions. Nope, I replied. I feel completely fine. He stared at me intently for a while, then gave Hu Lianfeng a firm pat on the back. Old Hu, you seriously struck gold with this kid. I can't quite figure out his physical makeup, but honestly, the sacred martial body doesn't even compare. A technique that literally runs on autopilot? Man, I've never heard of anything like that. The world is seriously full of crazy surprises. I just lay there, secretly celebrating. All 3 of them were convinced my skills came down to some unique, one-of-a-kind constitution. My disguise as a prodigy was totally bulletproof. Zhang Hongguang let out a sigh, remarking, what a waste it was. That such a gifted prospect ended up with Hu Lianfeng. That instantly sparked their usual petty bickering, with Hu Lianfeng hyping up his prestigious sect lineage, while Zhang Hongguang kept reminding him he was just an outer disciple. Elder Chien cut them both off, suggesting they could actually both mentor me if they wanted. But seeing how fast I was progressing, what he really worried about was whether they'd run out of things to teach me. Then, Zhang Hongguang turned to look at me and asked if I'd object to taking on another master. I cast a glance toward Hu Lianfeng, who just shrugged and told me it was entirely my call. He mentioned that in today's martial arts scene, studying under multiple mentors was pretty standard. Modern training academies routinely taught styles from various lineages simultaneously, and the top grandmasters were actively pushing to integrate and share these arts openly. The old exclusive sect mentalities were fading away. Zhang Hongguang brushed aside any formal rituals. No need to kneel, just call him master. He mentioned wanting to see how far I could push my limits. He offered to train me in a special technique, known as the limitless art, which he claimed was every bit as potent as the Northern Darkness Divine Art. Whoa! Li Yinfeng and Zhang Hongguang instantly got into a huge spat over who deserved the title of First Master and who would have to settle for Second Master. Right in the middle of their bickering, Zhang Hongguang accidentally let slip that if Elder Qian took me on as a student too, he'd end up being ranked as Third Master. The entire room went dead silent. Zhang Hongguang realized he'd stuck his foot in his mouth and began backtracking, but Elder Qian just chuckled. He remarked, "That actually makes me want to adopt you as a disciple." He didn't give a damn about petty titles. He just genuinely wanted to see what height someone with my level of raw potential could reach. Then he dropped a massive bombshell that made everyone freeze. Surpassing even a grandmaster isn't out of the question. He looked straight at me and asked if I'd take him as my mentor. I was totally blindsided. Literally this morning, he'd told me to scram, and now he was offering this. I clasped my hands. Without a second thought, your disciple greets his first master. Elder Qian settled the pecking order based on age. He'd take the top spot, who Lin Feng would be the second, and Zhang Hongguang would be third. Nobody dared object. Zhang Hongguang was eager to teach me his limitless art, right then and there, but Hu Linfeng brought up a massive snag. The Northern Darkness divine art simply couldn't coexist with any other combat style. The conflicting internal energies would clash, triggering a fatal case of cultivation deviation. Zhang Hongguang shot right back that his boundless style could elevate someone straight to the rank of major achievement grandmaster, whereas the Northern Darkness divine method capped out at entry grandmaster, since they lacked the advanced follow-up guide, which Li Yinfeng didn't actually have. Elder Qian interjected, pointing out that his own style also peaked at major achievement. Grandmaster, as the absolute elite manuals that pushed further, were safely guarded by the Demon Slayer group and secluded sects, only accessible once you hit the Grandmaster tier. Plus, the compatibility issue was no joke. Most styles clashed badly with one another. Then he paused, teasing that he held a wild card, a method both of them would definitely know. Jin Hongguang caught on right away. Are you talking about the primordial chaos art? Hu Yangfeng's eyes popped. He noted that the primordial chaos art was legendary. It caused quite a stir when it first dropped, yet literally everyone who attempted to master it failed. It was viewed purely as a concept piece, totally impossible to put into practice. Its sole purpose was blending diverse styles into a single entity, offering zero inherent cultivation strength on its own. Elder Qi nodded. Just because others failed to learn it doesn't mean he can't. He went on to say that if I managed to make the primordial chaos artwork, he had tons of alternative methods for me to blend together. And if that panned out, shattering the ultimate grandmaster barrier might actually be doable. I couldn't follow all the high-level jargon, but the word fusion clicked instantly. My setup forced martial arts to level up completely on autopilot. Every extra style added just meant faster collective gains. A strategy allowing me to train in multiple arts, without them totally destroying one another, was precisely what I required. Facing Elder Qian, I spoke up. First Master, I reckon it's worth a shot. Both Hu Yinfeng and Zhang Hongguang cast anxious looks my way. As I gave my consent, Zhang Hongguang clarified that this primordial chaos art was unearthed in some nameless Taoist shrine decades back. A ton of practitioners had tried mastering it, yet every single attempt since had fallen flat. A few even lost their minds to chi deviation, while most ended up blowing precious years on a style that just didn't pan out. Hu Yanfeng agreed that despite my crazy gifts, the manual seemed highly sketchy. I turned to Elder Qian to get his perspective. He conceded that their doubts were totally fair, but he laid out the broader situation. According to him, plenty of Grandmaster tier fighters were actively analyzing this style, sensing that the hurdle to surpassing the Grandmaster rank wasn't about raw potential, but rather the lack of a proper cultivation path. Certain experts aimed to utilize the primordial chaos art to blend their current styles together, whereas others sought to forge brand new methods from the ground up, yet neither path had worked out just yet. Still, he truly believed the primordial chaos art held the greatest promise. No one in this day and age has successfully crafted original techniques, whatever special circumstances enabled the masters of old to generate. Such diverse systems simply are no more. Should I pull this off, it won't merely profit me. It might revolutionize the entire martial arts landscape. He had witnessed the breach. He recognized that when facing those elite fiends, further in, even top-tier grandmasters stood no chance. Mankind desperately needed to shatter that ceiling. He told me he wanted to pave a way to whatever was waiting out there. Grandmaster or not, walking that path was entirely my call. I didn't blink. I'm in, let's learn it. My logic was pretty simple. If the system could process and log the method, it'd work. If it couldn't, I'd just ditch it and not waste any time. Elder Chien started chanting the verses, and the second he wrapped up, a pair of system alerts popped right up. The first one noted I'd mastered a unique method, the primordial chaos art. Curiously, it lacked a progress bar. Instead, it could blend any two techniques, provided they had both been trained, all the way to absolute perfection. The next prompt stated, I triggered a special condition, known as the primordial chaos mode, which let me practice two distinct martial arts, at the same time without them clashing. I blinked at the screen. The benchmarks were brutal. Both skills had to be completely maxed out before they could fuse. On top of that, running two styles simultaneously wouldn't normally trigger increasingly violent internal blowback. Once they advanced past the entry level, the danger of chi deviation went through the roof. Yet this primordial chaos mode completely bypassed the risk. It allowed both styles to thrive together inside me, without hindering one another at all. And since the system had cracked the code, automatically, I unlocked the mode on the spot. Something Elder Chien's own old man had spent 3 decades chasing and failed to pull off. I opened my eyes. The three of them were staring at me, totally stressed. I gave them the facts, or well, my spin on them. I explained that the style required hitting a specific mindset. I called it the primordial chaos state, a realm where two distinct techniques could run independently, within the body without clashing. I tapped into that state and figured that once I maxed out both techniques to perfection, I could fuse them. Hu Yanfeng and Zhang Hongguang just looked clueless. They'd never heard of such a state. But Elder Chien's face went completely pale with shock. He said, my description matched his father's theory down to a T. His father had spent over 30 years studying the primordial chaos art and concluded it was actually a Taoist technique, not a martial one. The creator was likely a cultivator of the Tao who had dabbled in martial arts. His father believed that whoever forged the art might never have successfully pulled it off themselves. He passed away without cracking it, but his final words were that anyone who mastered it would reach a level unprecedented in history, a perfect fusion of Tao and martial arts. I smiled bitterly and remarked that it sounded like Elder Chien hadn't expected me to succeed at all. He shook his head. He'd held onto some hope due to my unique talent, but decades of failure by everyone else had kept his expectations pretty low. Then he turned to Zhang Hongguang and ordered him to teach me the limitless art. Right away, he wanted to see this primordial chaos state in action. Zhang Hongguang nodded and began reciting the limitless. Without limit, the body is trained without end. Force is refined without conclusion. Zhang Hongguang started chanting the limitless art. I low-key stressed I'd completely forget it, but the system had already downloaded the info. Right off the bat, I started hyping it up. Limitless art, you're the new kid here, so you better show your senior some respect. The Northern Darkness divine art. The technique totally locked in. It sparked its inner drive to level up and kicked into auto-grind mode at 10 proficiency points per minute. I gave it another nudge, telling it that, since it was technically a higher-tier skill, it shouldn't get flexed on. It doubled to 20 per minute. Then things took a wild turn. The Northern Darkness divine art. Seeing its rival pop up and push the pace. Its own cultivation speed skyrocketed to 160 points per minute, twice the speed it was pulling before. Pitting these two skills against each other was making them both grind way faster. I pulled up my main status menu. My cultivation tier was body tempering. Initiate level, sitting at 2,600 out of 10,000. The Northern Darkness. Divine Art hit minor achievement, scoring 24,000 out of 100,000. Limitless Art was fresh out the box at 120 out of 1,000. Plus, while I was catching Z's 8 extremes, Fist had casually maxed to minor achievement, and Mountain Collapse Fist reached Initiate level. Both were still out there slaying beasts on autopilot. Right when Zhang Hongguang asked if I'd memorized the whole manual, I shut down the interface and faked a meditation pose. Gotta play along, right? Moments latte. I felt a grip on my wrist. Elder Chin was scanning my vital energy. I noticed that two distinct streams of heat, surging through entirely different meridian channels. Deep inside me, one felt incredibly powerful, a slight pause right where their paths crossed. The pair of currents would take turns slipping past, never bumping heads like they had minds of their own. Elder Chien yanked his hand back, looking completely floored. He asked if I was steering both of those energy flows. Myself, but I told him no way. They were just moving on autopilot, steered by some power that kept them from crashing. He remarked that he could distinctly feel both currents at once, tempering my body without any friction at all. Throughout the martial world, some martial artists cultivate two styles, though they always switch between them, never running both at the exact same time, because two distinct types of inner chi, smashing together inside you, could tear your meridians to shreds, or drop you dead on the spot. That was a hard rule, for as long as martial arts have been around, and I had just shattered it. He figured that at the pace I was going, I'd hit minor mastery in body tempering in about 7 or 8 hours, going from 0 to basic body tempering in just 4 hours, and from basic to minor mastery in less than a day. He swore he'd never witnessed anything quite like it in his whole life. Huo Yinfeng nearly choked on his spit. Zhang Hongguang went dead silent. He used to be so proud when his master dubbed him a 1 in 100 prodigy. It took him a week to reach basic body tempering, and 3 whole months for minor mastery. Yet I was on track to clear it all in a single day. By his math, my raw talent was at least 100 times his own. Elder Qian then gave orders to the other two. When the sun was up, they'd train me in every single combat skill they knew. Come nightfall, we kept hitting up the rift. As per usual, no fresh moves for the time being. A pair of skills was probably my max, at least until I could blend them via the primordial chaos. Art. Once Hu Li, Yinfeng, and Zhang Hongguang had passed down all their knowledge, Elder Qian was set to take the reins. By the time my wounds fully closed up, I should be closing in on mastery of body tempering, strong enough to go hunt down beasts inside the rift. He gave me a look and dropped some wisdom that I burned into my brain. In the martial world, might makes right, period. But a high cultivation rank doesn't always equal real power. True fighters are chiseled in the heat of combat. Right then, my stomach let out such a massive growl that all 3 of them caught it. I awkwardly asked if there was anything to eat at a crazy hour like this. Hu Yinfeng grinned, hit a buzzer next to the door, and just moments later, a guard rolled in a 3-tier trolley loaded with meat, identical to the feast from dinner. Hu Yinfeng shoved it right to my bedside and told me to go wild. I didn't need to be told twice. Around midday the following day, I managed a breakthrough in basic body tempering. The usual signs cropped up: intense heat, heavy sweating, and another wave of dark impurities oozing out, even if it was less than the first go-round. Elder Qian explained that the second cleansing was sparked by the limitless art, which threw in its own refining power. The limitless art actually unlocked its novice tier at that very moment, making its progression twice as fast. Pacing like this with both methods combined, I was raking in roughly 20 realm EXP every single minute. I'd hit a massive milestone in body tempering. Within 16 hours, Hu Yangfeng checked in on my injuries. I tested my movements carefully and realized I was pretty much fine. Breaking through 2 realms in a single night had mended what normally takes 100 days. Every time I ranked up, the surplus energy instantly patched up my mangled flesh and bones. No wonder powerhouse warriors live longer. Their bodies are constantly getting a total reboot. Hu Yangfeng noted that since I was all patched up, he'd start training me in martial techniques. Right away, I bounded out of bed. Then he caught a whiff of me and said to hit the showers first. Fair call. Between last night's sweat-drenched bandages and the morning's toxic purge, I reeked terribly. Once I got cleaned up, Hu Yangfeng was waiting for me with a massive saber. He mentioned that since the 4-blade sect ambushed me, he'd train me in their very own trademark style, the fatal 4 slashes, so I could throw it right back at them next time. Consider it my first lesson in the ways of the martial world. Always pay back your vendettas tenfold. That's exactly how you ensure no one messes with you. He ran through the forms to show me. 4 strikes, each zeroing in on a fatal soft spot. Uncomplicated, vicious, and crafted solely to end lives. I watched it just once and told him I had it down. He looked taken aback, but transitioned into his primary fighting style. The 4 Seasons Blade, a postnatal tier saber art, featuring seamless flows that chain together without end. After a single demo, I told him I'd mastered it. He didn't buy it and challenged me to prove it. Grabbing the saber, I perfectly mimicked the moves. They lacked polish, sure, but the core mechanics were totally there. He locked eyes with me, suddenly growing suspicious about when he first taught me the Northern Darkness. Divine art. It took 8 tries before I could say I'd actually committed it to memory. Yet here I was, picking up moves after just a single glance. Was I just messing with him earlier? I put the blame squarely on the primordial chaos art, claiming that everything became a breeze once I wrapped my head around it. He couldn't really fact-check that, seeing as no one else was capable of practicing it. So he just went along with the excuse. Right then, He resolved to dump his entire arsenal into me in a single day. Throughout the next 2 hours, he drilled me on the meteor fist, heart-crushing palm, swimming, dragon steps, along with a concealed weapon style known as the soul-chasing dart. Most of his repertoire sat at the body-tempering tier, mixed with a handful of postnatal techniques. The Four Seasons blade served as his primary combat style. I mirrored every single move right back to him, without dropping a single beat. By the time we finished, he just stood there frozen, looking totally proud, yet completely drained. He had spent decades scraping those techniques together, bleeding and scrapping for every last one of them. Meanwhile, I had downloaded his entire life's work in a mere 2 hours, and my system would down the line, maximize each ability to absolute perfection, a peak that he hadn't even managed to reach himself with a few of them. Zhang Hongguang observed the whole show from his cot, merely shaking his head. The moment Hu Linfeng sat down, looking utterly spent, Zhang Hongguang got up and announced it was his turn to step up. His expertise lay in a completely different blade discipline, the Tang sword. It was nimbler and swifter than Hu Linfeng's hefty saber, making it ideal for dueling. He instructed me in the silk weaving blade, smoke steps, 8 trigrams, palm, and the bone-crushing fist, on top of the mountain collapse fist. He had already walked me through. His particular skills were all strictly postnatal grade, meaning they were far trickier and way tougher to master. Yet, I managed to master them all, after seeing them just once. Within an hour, he had nothing left to show me. Elder Qian got up and remarked that I was the weirdest freak he'd ever seen. He cautioned me that if the Demon Slayer Corps ever caught wind of my training method, they'd likely dissect me for research. He noted that martial arts usually focus on quality over quantity, since a person's stamina has limits. But because my moves leveled up on their own, none of those standards applied to me. Raising a wooden staff, he told me, he'd pass down his signature weapon style, the Overlord Spear, a legendary martial art, inherited from an ancient military commander. Millennia ago, it was pure raw offense. Every single strike drove forward, with zero backing down. When he performed it, that wooden branch felt exactly like a real spear. Decades of grind had turned him and the weapon into a single entity. The system recognized it as an innate tier style, needing 100,000 EXP just to unlock the basics, 10 times the requirement of a postnatal move. Following the spear, Elder Qian drilled me in 8 more postnatal arts: chain cannon strike, tiger taming fist, sky-shattering palm, Vajra palm, horse-cleaving glaive, 6 harmonies spear, 1,000-pound drop, and phantom steps. By the time we finished, my status menu displayed 21 combat skills in total. I triggered each of them twice, putting them all on AFK, grinding mode. Crunching the numbers, a postnatal art, would require roughly a month and a half to hit max level, while body refining moves took around 5 days. As for innate talents, something like the Overlord Spear would take roughly 10 months. To give you some context, Elder Qian trained in the Overlord Spear technique his whole life without ever mastering it completely. But when it comes to my 2 cultivation methods, both will max out their mastery in about 5 days. Once they peak, they will yield plenty of cultivation experience to advance me to the post. Not thou hail me. Just 5 days to go from 0 to postnatal. That kind of speed would absolutely shock the martial arts world. Later that evening, the 3 masters headed out to the rift. Left to my own devices, I began practicing my skills by hand for the very first time, and I stumbled onto a game changer. Whenever I went through the physical motions of the 8 extremes fist, the system recognized it as a self-motivational boost. As a result, the skill's training speed immediately doubled. After 10 reps, it doubled again. After hitting 100, it multiplied yet again. Every 10-fold increase in my dedication unlocked an additional multiplier. Even better, this approach bypassed the dangerous cultivation deviation state that verbal trash-talking usually risks. At higher levels, I could stack both methods together, physically practice the form myself, and then verbally mock it. The buffs would just keep stacking boundlessly. By the time the 8 extremes fist reached major mastery, it was racking up 1,280 proficiency points every minute. Pacing like that, it would hit absolute perfection in 13 hours. My previous calculations were completely off. Everything was moving way faster than expected. Next, I applied the exact same strategy to the Northern Darkness Divine Art. I sat down and initiated its internal energy cycle, manually for the very first time. The system gave a positive response initially, but quickly encountered a snag. Technique incomplete. Unable to further optimize training efficiency. Please master the remaining parts of the technique. I felt totally baffled and unfulfilled. Next, I gave the limitless art a shot. It reacted just as expected. Every breakthrough in my solo training cranked its pace up to 160 per minute. Yet, after hitting 100 rounds, it ran into the exact same wall with that same alert. Incomplete. Both styles capped out hard at 160 per minute. Through my own grinding, I recalled what I'd been told before. The Northern Darkness Divine art could only take you to entry. Grandmaster, while the limitless art only went as far as major achievement. Grandmaster. Elder Chien had mentioned that. The precise reason why nobody could push past the Grandmaster level was that every known style out there was fundamentally flawed. These were ancient martial art styles, handed down through the ages, but not a single one of them was whole. I just couldn't wrap my head around it, so I gave up trying. Maybe things would click for me once I actually hit the Grandmaster rank myself. For the moment, I stuck to what was working. My combat skills were entirely flawless, and their cultivation pace could be accelerated without any limits. I pulled an all-nighter, practicing every single technique I'd mastered. Watching those stats tick up, I spent that whole night training every single skill in my arsenal, running through each one 100 times over. That was the sweet spot. See, after 100 reps, the next upgrade tier demanded 1,000, which really wasn't worth the trouble right now. A few basic moves only took a minute or two per run, but the trickier ones ate up 7 or 8 minutes. By the time my 3 masters made it back at daybreak, I hadn't even cleared half of the list. The big news, though, was that I'd advanced to major achievement in body tempering. The pair of cultivation methods had active cycles all night, clocking 160 proficiency every minute, each racking up a grand total of 170k proficiency, plus 17,000 realm experience over 9 hours. Jinhan Kwang crossed the threshold first and completely locked up. He watched me drill the 8 trigrams, with sweat dripping from his palms. He wondered why I bothered putting in manual reps when my skills were already farming passively. I explained that throwing down some actual practice seemed to crank the training gains up even higher. The guy looked like he'd just been struck by lightning. Hu Linfeng pushed past him to ask if I seriously meant that a baseline this crazy could get boosted further. I gave a nod just as Elder Chien stepped inside, seized my wrist, and fell dead silent for a moment before raising his eyes. You've hit the major achievement stage in body tempering. Instantly, both Hu Linfeng and Zhang Hongguang blurted out in pure shock. I verified that the breakthrough happened roughly 30 minutes before their return. Elder Chien could only shake his head, muttering. That standard logic didn't work on me at all. My background auto skills kept constantly mending my physique throughout the workout, and that burst of breakthrough energy wiped out any leftover physical exhaustion. Any ordinary cultivator grinding like that all night would be flat on their back. But since my body gets reinforced second by second, there are 0 side effects. Zhang Hongguang wanted to know my real pace now, with a double technique routine going on at once. I gave him the straight facts. Just about 3 more days to hit the postnatal realm. He slumped onto his mattress, looking totally beaten. It took him 3 whole years to transition from body tempering to the postnatal realm, while my entire cultivation time was just 2 days. Then Hu Linfeng chimed in, saying he'd spent 8 years on it. So they started squabbling over whose natural talent was absolute trash. But they both struck a dead silence once it hit them. Neither of them could even hold a candle to me. Elder Chin finally settled the debate, declaring that they were merely ordinary folks, whereas I was destined to be a trendsetter who defines a whole new era. That compliment seemed to take the sting out of it for them. After all, even a master of the innate level like him was completely outclassed by what I was pulling off. I asked if heading into the Rift World tonight was possible, seeing as I'd already achieved major mastery. Elder Chin gave me the green light and inquired about my weapon choice. A broadsword, a tang sword, or a spear. My choice fell on a broadsword. Having studied the styles of all 3 weapons, I figured the broadsword was the ultimate pick for taking down monsters. Its hefty, massive build made it perfect for dealing with crowds, while the tang sword offered great precision. Maneuvering it through a massive swarm would be a nightmare. As for the spear, it packed a punch, but my overlord spear technique hadn't even scraped entry-level proficiency yet. Zhang Hongguang threw me a skeptical look at my decision, assuming I was throwing shade at his preferred tang sword. I laid out my logic, and Elder Chin stepped in to back up my claim. He pointed out to Zhang Hongguang that the tang sword had a massive downside when wielded by body-tempering warriors. Whenever that elongated blade strikes something rigid, dislodging it demands an immense amount of brute force. Postnatal cultivators rely heavily on inner energy rather than raw muscle, so they don't even notice the issue. But at my current stage, where physical power is still my main asset, handling the weightier broadsword is actually far more manageable. Following that, Elder Chin dedicated some time to mentoring the three of us on weaponry and the core tenets of martial arts philosophy, right before officially taking me in as his personal disciple. He'd never passed this kind of info to Hu Li, Infeng, or Zhang Hongwang. He definitely had a change of heart, since he was already schooling me. He figured he might as well loop everyone in. After a bit, the cell went dead quiet. The four of us chilled, saving our strength for tonight. Right around 8 p.m., Elder Chien unlocked the cell door and we rolled out. By 8:30, we had crossed into the rift. This time around, I wasn't sweating it. Elder Chien rented a broadsword for me from the armory. That icy reflection off the edge got my adrenaline pumping. Tonight, I was finally hunting down monsters and banking some serious merit points for my freedom. Elder Chien split our crew up. Huilin Feng and Zhang Hongwang headed to the canyon for Tier 2 beasts. Elder Chien was taking me down to a river zone, packed with Tier 1 monsters to personally keep an eye on me. Once we made it to the car, I automatically went to open the back door, but Elder Chien had already claimed the spot. He told me to drive, though I'd never been behind the wheel. I got thrown in prison on the day I turned 18, way before I could even grab a license. But Elder Chien talked me through the steps. It's an automatic, meaning just 2 pedals. Brake on your left, gas on your right. Inside the Rift world, there weren't any paved roads or traffic rules, so I just steered wherever he pointed and hit the gas. I started off pretty shaky, but found my rhythm fast. The ground was incredibly rugged and full of ruts, yet I was cruising at nearly 80 kilometers per hour in no time. Elder Chien chilled in the back seat, not bothered one bit by all the heavy bouncing. 20 minutes later, some lights flashed ahead. The riverbank hunting grounds. Elder Chien had me pull over a few hundred meters out. I snatched the broadsword from the trunk and trailed behind him up a slight incline that looked out over the battlefield. He clapped a hand onto my shoulder. Time to show what you've got. Get down there. I switch on my badge recorder and sprint toward the stone riverbank, using smoke steps to burst ahead. The whole place was crawling with fighters, way more than back at the canyon. Hundreds of warriors were trading blows with beasts, all across a massive, rocky plain, hunting for a target. I locked eyes on what looked like a small deer. It had spots resembling a sika deer, but lacked any antlers. Instead, 2 massive fangs thrust out from its jaws. It looked a lot weaker than the rest of the pack. So I made my move, shifting gears from smoke steps to swimming dragon steps, which are way better for close-quarters combat. The deer creature lunged at me fast, quicker than I braced for, but I kept my cool. The lethal 4 slashes technique beamed vital targeting data right into my brain. Its vulnerabilities were completely clear to me. Throat, skull, opening strike right to the throat. A clean hit. Next up, a heavy overhead chop to the cranium. The beast collapsed. I didn't even need to use the 3rd or 4th blows, spinning around, so my badge cam could log the kill. I backed off to a secure, open clearing, just like Elder Chin drilled into me. Glancing down at my blade, man, that was basic. Way too easy. The forms just poured right out of me, like I've been doing this for a lifetime. The second, I resolved to unleash the fatal 4 slashes. The perfect line of attack flashed through my mind. Angles mapped out automatically, timing the precise way to counter while evading. Pulling up the system status. The fatal 4 slashes technique was merely at major mastery, not even hitting peak perfection yet. Yet, I just totally dropped the Tier 1 beast in 2 moves, and that was during my actual first real combat. I was completely oblivious back then, but up on the ridge, Elder Chien had leaped straight to his feet. That stag was actually known as a fong-mouthed deer, an elite, Tier 1 monster that most fighters actively steered clear of. No other warriors were anywhere near the damn thing, which honestly should have been my first clue. Elder Chien fully expected me to have a rough time and learn a brutal lesson. Instead, I put it down in just a couple of strikes, with the effortless flow of a seasoned pro. Now, I was already locking eyes on my next mark, a leopard-like beast crouching lower to the turf, though noticeably longer, sporting wicked claws stretching a solid 10 centimeters from its paws. Gut feeling told me this monster was tougher than the deer. I really wanted to push my limits further. Elder Chien observed from up above, half impressed but also pretty anxious. He muttered that the target I'd picked out was a long-claw leopard, the absolute apex of Tier 1 beasts, the kind of threat that even peak body, tempering experts seriously struggled to handle. Kid, he whispered to himself, can you actually pull this off? I didn't have a clue what any of these creatures were called. Elder Chien had purposefully left me totally in the dark. Learning to size up a foe's power strictly by instinct was part of my regimen. Right after slaying that deer thing, I shifted my focus onto a nearby leopard creature. It crouched lower to the ground, more elongated, with 10-centimeter talons protruding from its paws. It seemed way meaner. I lunged. It snarled and sprang right at me, soaring 2 or 3 meters high. Most guys would have jumped to meet it, but leaping would just leave me defenseless midair. Instead, I slid right underneath the thing in a low tackle. Its underbelly was soft and totally exposed. I'd clocked that fatal flaw. The very second I laid eyes on the beast. First, an upward rip into its gut. As I coasted beneath it, scalding blood splattered all over my face. Second hit. I whipped around and plunged the blade straight into its backside, burying a third of the steel inside it. Third strike. I yanked the weapon out and slammed the monster into the dirt. With a brutal sideswipe, it was down for the count. 3 moves, and the apex predator of first-tier beasts was finished. Wiping the gore from my eyes, I had to wonder, was I actually this overpowered, or were these monsters just total pushovers? I'd only utilized the fatal 4 slashes, a basic conditioning method, without even tapping into my postnatal tier abilities. Every single time a creature twitched, its vulnerabilities instantly lit up in my mind. I could map out angles of attack, evasion paths, and precision timing before the fiend could even reach me. What I failed to notice was that Elder Chien had leaped to his feet. Up on the ridge, he was reeling from what he'd just witnessed. A complete rookie, slaying the ultimate first-tier monster in just 3 strikes. Then, the realization hit him. I'd internalized 21 different martial styles, each bringing its own strategy for mapping flaws and striking right where it hurts. A single technique offered only limited insight, but 21 of them working in tandem granted me something akin to battlefield omniscience. The sheer amount of combat intelligence flooding into my mind essentially forged me into a warrior. That should have been impossible for someone my rank. He muttered under his breath that he came along to guide me through my first actual clash. But honestly, there was nothing left to teach. I was already punching way above my weight class. I took down another fawn-mouthed deer and immediately got into it with a red-eyed wild dog, the absolute weakest Tier 1 beast, right in the middle of the scrap. I caught wind of 4 people sneaking up from behind. I wrapped up the hound with a clean decapitation, spun around, and sure enough it was them, the 4-blade sect. That same middle-aged guy from last night stood just 3 meters away, grinning with his sword drawn. He mocked that he was shocked I'd survived the drop, and even more stunned that I actually had the nerve to return. Glancing down at the dead hound on the dirt, he scoffed, assuming I'd barely managed to scrap by against the weakest creature around. He figured I was still just an entry-level, body-tempering scrub. The old woman, who was their sect leader, spoke up from behind him. She had spotted the dead fawn-mouthed deer nearby and cautioned him that I might be tougher than he realized. But the guy just brushed her off, claiming there was no way someone who tumbled off a precipice yesterday could have bested a high level Tier 1 beast. It had to be someone else's leftover kill. He leveled his blade right at me. Since we didn't finish the job yesterday, we'll end you today. Little did he know, the reason I took sweet time dealing with that wild dog wasn't because I couldn't drop it. I was simply testing out different footwork patterns, just evading in real battle without attacking. I only delivered the final blow when I spotted the 4-blade sect closing in, jabbing my weapon into the dirt. I locked eyes with the middle-aged guy. He mocked me, claiming he'd checked the hill and couldn't find Hua Linfeng anywhere around. Giving a cold smirk, I told him straight up, my master wasn't needed to handle trash like him. That ticked him off. He lunged, weapon raised. But to me, he was completely wide open. Messy steps, shaky stance. His posture was wobbling all over, and the hand gripping his hilt was trembling. I watched him close the 3-meter gap and struck. A single, clean upward slice right up his torso, ripping from his gut up to his chest, finishing as the edge drove directly through his heart. He stared down at the gash, tried lifting his weapon, but failed. Blood came coughing up from his mouth, and he collapsed. I yanked my steel free and faced the remaining 3. I planned to settle this score once I got out of jail, but since you came looking, let's end it now. Bystanders began muttering among themselves. They recognized the 4-blade sect leader and were shocked that someone had actually taken one of them out. Some figured I belonged to a powerful clan with hidden bodyguards. Others noted the sect leader was at entry level. Postnatal, she'd easily wreck a body temper novice. The old hag shrieked the deceased man's name, unsheathed her weapon, and barked orders for the other 2 to flank me. One advanced from the left, one from the right. with a swarm of monsters blocking my escape. I had to smash my way out from one flank. I made the first move. Hu Liangfeng always noted that you gotta strike before the enemy is ready, deploying smoke steps at absolute top speed. I closed the distance on the guy to my left. Before their sect leader could even react, he threw up the lethal 4 slashes to defend himself. But man, his version was sluggish and clumsy, maybe a minor achievement stage at best. So I showed him what the technique looked like. At major achievement level, 1 fluid motion, duck swing lift. He dropped backward dead. The sect leader shrieked and aimed a slash at my head. I sidestepped 2 meters with a single lateral shift and dodged it cleanly. She yelled for the last guy to double team me. He charged right at my right flank. I backed off a few paces, luring him forward, then flipped my direction in a heartbeat. Swimming dragon steps. The classic art of retreating to advance. By the time he caught on to what was happening, my blade was already crashing down on his skull. I didn't even bother checking if he was finished. Hearing the sect leader right on my tail, I spun around and brought my sword up to parry. The shockwave rattled right through my bones. A bizarre energy surged down her blade into my arms. Yep, this was internal force. The sheer power of the postnatal realm. My hands went totally numb, and I reeled back, for 5 paces before regaining my footing. In terms of raw power, she was entry-level postnatal. She completely outmatched me. I had no clue, but Elder Chien had actually walked down the slope. He'd been fully prepared to bail me out. But after watching me slaughter 3 body, tempering experts in mere seconds, every single one matching my own rank. So, he chose to just watch instead. He pinched a pebble between his fingertips, primed to flick it if things went south. The Grandmaster was absolutely livid, losing 3 disciples in less than a minute. She growled, accusing me of harboring some secret. Just yesterday, I could barely balance on a hill. Yet today, I was slaughtering peers of my own caliber. Piece of cake, she scoffed, claiming that once I was dead, whatever hidden power I possessed would belong to her, and she'd use it to resurrect the 4-blade sect. She lunged forward again. Man, she was quick. Way faster than me. Fleeing wasn't an option. Squinting, I tightened my grip on the hilt. Bring it. I recognized her opening form. The fatal 4 slashes. It was the exact technique I just used to drop her crew. Except she was postnatal, meaning I couldn't go toe-to-toe with her raw might. I shifted to the silk weaving blade, a postnatal level style, specifically meant to ensnare adversaries. It served as the perfect counter to the fatal 4 slashes. Hyper-aggressive, rushing momentum. Our weapons collided, even with the ideal counter. The sheer shockwave nearly ripped the sword right out of my palms. Postnatal internal energy was no joke. She kept driving forward, aiming a second strike straight at my neck. Swapping hands, I parried upward, but the sheer momentum forced me back half a step. She capitalized on that slight opening instantly. Her third thrust came barreling right at my chest. Unable to evade, I executed the 1,000-pound drop, sinking my center of gravity entirely, while positioning my blade flat against my torso as a guard. Her steel slammed into the flat of my weapon, throwing sparks. Simultaneously, the anchoring power from the 1,000-pound drop anchored my feet to the rock and snapped my upper body straight back. The recoil sent her flying backward through the air. That was my shot. I went into a full sprint using smoke steps. She flipped midair and stuck the landing on her feet, but completely lost track of me. I'd already looped around her using phantom steps. Sensing the wind at her back, she whipped around with a blind reverse slash. It whiffed. I was already past her, shifting from her back to her front, in a single, ghostly motion. By the time she realized what was happening, my blade had already sliced right across her throat. She clutched her hand to her neck, blood spilling through her fingers, staring at me in sheer disbelief. She muttered phantom steps before falling backward. I exhaled a heavy sigh. That reverse slash almost got me. If I'd been a split second slower, maneuvering from her back to her front, I'd be the one bleeding out right now. Looking around, every nearby fighter was staring. I caught sight of Elder Chien, standing by the edge of the stone beach, and quickly walked over to him. Behind me, the crowd went wild. No one could believe a body. Tempering fighter had just downed a postnatal warrior. They'd counted at least 5 distinct techniques that I'd pulled off in a single match. Silk weaving blade, smoke steps, 1,000-pound drop, phantom steps, and deathly 4 slashes. Some figured I belonged to a major clan, while others claimed I'd wreck Martial Academy students. Nobody could guess where I'd come from. By the time I reached Elder Chien, I wondered if we ought to split, before the base guards hunted me down for taking lives. He just chuckled and replied that the Rift Zone lacked those kind of regulations. Life and death matters were strictly between individuals. No one really gave a damn unless you started a massive massacre. Then he paused, admitting we actually did have to clear out, though not because of the bloodshed. He told me, first-tier creatures won't push your limits anymore. You just took down a postnatal fighter. Sticking around here to farm weak mobs is totally useless. If you want to level up, you gotta face true peril. I'm bringing you over to the canyon. He mentioned second-tier monsters. I wavered, though not out of cowardice. I was stressed about my Demon Slayer credentials. I had registered just yesterday as a regular civilian. Showing up at the canyon, slaying second-tier fiends might definitely raise some eyebrows. Old Man Chien shrugged it off, saying tons of folk signed up, with forged cultivation ranks. The Demon Slayers didn't give a toss about your tier. They only cared about the body count. I trailed behind him up the bank toward the vehicle. The canyon was a whole different ballgame compared to the riverbank. The combat down here was downright vicious. Second-tier beasts could instantly end a postnatal expert in one hit. If they let their guard drop, pretty much everyone here had reached at least minor achievement. Postnatal status this time around. The sheer precipice didn't slow me down. Utilizing my smoke steps, I swept downward like a vapor. Reaching the base, I scanned a massive swarm of abominations and questioned Elder Chien on whether any third-tier threats were hidden among them. He gave a negative nod. Third-tier monsters roamed far past the canyon. Deep in the desert, they mastered chi, like natural-born fighters, and possessed actual intellect. Even with his strength, heading into those sands was basically suicide. The few top-tier elite warriors in Haiching were all family heads, loaded with resources and with zero reason to go. So, the desert remained completely untouched, despite being packed with spiritual herbs, worth way more than monster carcasses. He broke down the point system in a way that made total sense. A single point was worth about 10,000 Federation bucks, but they were worth way more in reality, since you could buy cultivation materials that cash couldn't touch. I asked, what happens when every monster here is dead? He just chuckled. What I witnessed at the canyon and the riverbank was absolutely nothing. A drop in the bucket for the Rift World's population. The creatures didn't just gather here naturally. Grandmaster-level combatants intentionally baited groups of beasts into these managed zones, so human recruits could train. Every single time a zone was wiped out, the remains were cleared away, and a new batch of monsters was herded in. The Rift World was crawling with beasts, with each breed ruling its own domain across a massive territory. I question why the Grandmasters didn't just slaughter all the low-tier monsters themselves and harvest the loot. Elder Chien's reply completely flipped my perspective. He told me the Federation wasn't just hoarding materials. They were raising an army. If a massive wave of high-tier beasts ever struck Blue Star, fighters brought up on easy handouts would lack the actual battlefield experience to push them back. Fragile greenhouse flowers can't weather a real storm. The whole Demon Slayer setup was designed to forge elite combatants through bloody warfare. Blue Star boasts a population of over 10 billion, so there's zero shortage of raw talent. What we desperately lack are killers who've been baptized in blood. Besides, the Grandmasters have a far grander strategy in mind. Down the line, they plan on launching an offensive deep into the Rift World, but pulling that off demands troops with lethal, practical power, and it's probably out of reach until a pioneer manages to break through and surpass the Grandmaster rank entirely. I was still processing all of this when Elder Chien suddenly grabbed my arm out of nowhere and yanked me backward. His gaze was locked onto a particular crowd, gathered up on the crest of the hill. Go give your second master a heads up. He muttered under his breath. The Zhongs are on site. Tell him he needs to pull out right away. Stay sharp. My blood instantly ran cold. I dashed straight down into the canyon, executing the swimming dragon footwork, dodging through the chaotic melee of monsters and martial artists, until I spotted who Yinfeng locked in combat with a heavily armored boar. Seeing me show up solo, a look of confusion crossed his face. I quickly passed along Elder Chien's warning. The Zhang family had arrived. Glancing up toward the ridge, his expression turned deadly serious. Zhang Jinya, he growled. I don't spot Zhang Yuanlan anywhere. Looks like it's just Zhang Jinya, bringing his crew out here for some rift training. His eyes remained fixed on the old man, leading the squad up at the top of the slope. The major achievement in Nate Master, who had slaughtered his kin and left Elder Chien to rot in a cell. Next, he glanced at me and muttered softly, "Got a split." I gave a nod. He melted right into the sea of brawlers and beasts, moving away from the incline, vanishing straight into the gloom, on the far side of the gorge. Once Hu Yinfeng was lost in the swarm, I doubled back toward the ridge, where Elder Chien was posted. The Zhang clan contingent had already made their descent. Their boss, an old-timer, marched right up to Elder Chien. Chin Tianlong. It's been a minute. How's the jail cell treating you? Word is you're out in a couple of years. Zhang Jinya taunted with a smug grin. Elder Chin's expression remained stone-cold. He just replied, cheers to you. It's been breezy. Zhang Jinya played it chummy, calling them lifelong pals, then faced the pack of youthful Zhang family members trailing behind him. Voici introducing El des Chiens. As the ex-boss of the Green Dragon Gang, rubbing in the X part, since that crew was history. The youngsters saluted Elder Chien together, though a few snickered right after. Elder Chien didn't even blink. He cautioned Zhang Jinya not to gloat too soon. Once he was free, there'd be a score to settle. Zhang Jinya snorted and dropped hints that he was nearing peak innate power, meaning Elder Chien's basic innate status just wouldn't cut it anymore. Elder Chien snapped back. A decade has rolled by. What makes you think I'm still at square one? That rattled Zhang Jinya. I caught the look on his face. He had only bested Elder Chien back then, by leveraging a superior cultivation tier. And even back then, it was a total nail-biter. Had Elder Chien mastered the 8th level of achievement, matching his own rank, Zhang Jinya knew he'd likely lose. He had the Zhang family's next generation to protect, and if an actual brawl kicked off, Elder Chien would have absolutely butchered them. So, he chose to restrain himself. But then, Zhang Jinya dropped a total bombshell. He warned Elder Chien not to assume that the Green Dragon Gang was wiped out by the Zhangs alone. He questioned why none of Elder Chien's former crew, his 4 guardians and 8 commanders, all top-tier fighters, had ever dropped by the prison. Were they wiped out or just chicken? Elder Chien instantly lost his cool. For the very first time, he snapped, demanding to know what Zhang Jinya meant. Zhang Jinya merely smirked and replied that Elder Chien would find out once he got out. As he passed by, he muttered a 6-word clue. Magic City, the Liu family's young master. Elder Chien went white as a sheet. I'd never seen him like that. It was like something inside him completely snapped. He just stood there, spacing out, whispering Magic City, the Liu family. I approached him and asked what was wrong. He glanced at me, and for a split second, I noticed a shift in his expression, pure desperation turning into something else. He told me to push harder with my training from now on. I replied that I'd already been busting my gut, and asked what was going down. He said our blood feud with the Zhang family was way more tangled than we'd imagined. It wasn't just about dealing with Zhang Jinya. I peeked over at Zhang Jinya, standing by the gorge's edge, keeping an eye on his clan's practice session. I made it clear to Elder Chien that Zhang Jinya's cultivation stage didn't matter, even if it was peak state. I was dead sure I could take him out in 2 years. No bluffing. The system gave me that absolute guarantee. Elder Chien just gave a slow head shake. The real issue wasn't the Zhang clan itself, but the power backing them up. The prominent Liu family of Magic City. They had twin brothers who were both grandmasters, one at entry level, the other at minor achievement. Working as a team, they could hold their own against a major achievement grandmaster. A decade later, who knows how much stronger they become. If both managed to level up, their combined strength could match a peak grandmaster. He pointed out that there were scarcely any grandmasters left in the world anyway. Those at peak grandmaster level could be counted on one hand. The Green Dragon Gang didn't just fall to the Zhang family alone. Those shadowy, high-level fighters, who blindsided everyone during the raid, they were actually sent by the Luo family. The whole mess kicked off with a petty dispute between Elder Chien and some young punk from the Luo clan, way back when. Elder Chien never dreamed that such a trivial spat would trigger such an insanely brutal revenge plot. Now I finally got why he felt so heavily burdened. This wasn't some minor local beef anymore. It tied directly into a powerhouse family, guarded by Grandmaster tier elites. Man, my hit list just kept stacking up. The Yi family, the Li family, the Zhang family, and now the Liu family. An elite martial arts dynasty from Magic City, with twin grandmasters on their side. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel the heat. Elder Chien just told me to keep my cool. Had I attained grandmaster status, the Liu clan wouldn't necessarily launch a war against the Zhangs just over some ancient feud. He mentioned he had faith in my potential, saying it was merely a matter of time. He and Hu Lianfeng were down to wait 3, 5, or even 10 years. Placing a hand on my shoulder, he exhaled a sigh. I probably can't pull off this revenge on my own anymore, so it's totally up to you. I assured him that a mentor is a father for life, and I'd square his debts for good. His eyes welled up when I told him that. Without me, he really stood no chance. The Green Dragon Gang was completely wiped out, leaving him unable to face the Zhang family solo. much less the powerful lose. He suggested we pack up and leave the canyon, since Zhang Jinya had spotted me by his side. He was stressed that Zhang Jinya might come after me. I agreed, having already put my fighting skills to the test, and verified that the system's auto-cultivation features worked every bit as well as actual years of hardcore practice. Right now, my top priority was to keep boosting my power level. We ran into Hu Lianfeng right by the prison gates, where Elder Qian filled him in on Zhang Jinya's drop-by, including the deal to let Elder Qian off the hook, on the condition that he take out Hu Lianfeng. Hu Lianfeng merely gave a cold smirk, pointing out that the only reason Zhang Jinya hadn't deployed hitmen straight into the cells was due to the Demon Slayer system being heavily guarded by elite Grandmaster tier combatants. Elder Qian had a hunch that Zhang Jinya's pop-in wasn't purely meant to spook us, dragging that many relatives down to the rift, hinted that something major was going down, most likely some upcoming Demon Slayer reform that Zhang Jinya had managed to catch wind of early. Locked down in the cell, I ground through the night while those two kept chatting. Come 2 a.m., I officially maxed out my body tempering. I still needed 40,000 more Realm EXP to hit postnatal entry, gaining 32 points per minute by stacking both of my techniques. That put me about 20 hours away, so I kept drilling every move until 6 a.m., finally wrapping up 100 reps for each one. All 21 martial skills were now leveling up at a smooth 1,280 proficiency per minute. My body tempering skills would hit perfection in 14 hours and postnatal skills in 5 days, while that innate level Overlord Spear would take around 6 weeks. I just crashed to get some rest, when Zhang Hongwang burst inside, looking totally panicked. Something huge just went down. Hu Lianfeng sat straight up and told him to spit out. Zhang Hongwang explained that 2 Grandmaster warriors had just stumbled upon a massive field of spirit rhinoceros grass out in the wasteland, right past the canyon. In 7 days, the Demon Slayers were putting together a raid to harvest the crop under Grandmaster level protection. Every single stock gathered was worth 100 points, but you had to be at least postnatal realm to join. Hu Lianfeng instantly realized why Zhang Jinya had brought so many clan members along to the rift. Spirit rhinoceros grass was the core ingredient for making spirit rhinoceros pills, a medicine that gives a temporary boost to skill and technique comprehension. A single pill fetched 1,000 points, and they were virtually impossible to get a hold of, even if you had the cash. I asked around about the pills, but totally lost interest. Boosting technique compréhension, my system already ran that on autopilot. Those pills were completely useless to me. Right then, Elder Qian chimed in. You gotta go, Wu Dao. 50 stocks will wipe your slate completely clean. Once you're out, I'm gonna set up a meeting with a guy who can help you handle the Enli families. That flipped the whole script. I couldn't care less about the grass or those pills, but getting out early and gaining an ally to crush my rivals? Count me in. I nodded. Perfect timing, too. I'll hit the postnatal realm by tomorrow. The 3 of them went totally quiet, staring right at me with that same exhausted, skeptical look I'd grown used to seeing on their faces. I crashed and slept all day, then scarfed down another massive meat feast before rolling out. At 8 p.m., when we arrived at the canyon, I noticed the Zhang clan was nowhere to be found. Elder Qian filled me in. They only showed up to register as Demon Slayers and bag a few monsters just to save face. Their actual target was the upcoming Spirit Rhinoceros Grass Run. In a week, hunting points amounted to mere chump change for wealthy legacy families who easily scored prime cultivation resources straight through the martial academies. I called out how rigged it all was. Regular folks like us risk our necks in the rift, while elite clan kids chill comfortably in academies, spoon-fed the very materials we bleed to produce. Elder Qian sighed, nodding in agreement. That was just the brutal reality of Blue Star's martial scene. The Demon Slayer Guild was pushing hard to shift the status quo, but those powerful houses have deep roots tangled everywhere, even pulling strings among the Grandmasters. Shattering the clan's total monopoly is going to take some time. He told me to quit stressing over politics and just go hunt monsters. So I dove off the ridge. My smoke steps had finally reached major mastery. I could literally float in midair for a second, just like those classic lightness skills from old school kung fu movies. All of my body tempering arts were fully maxed out, and my postnatal skills had hit major mastery. Even the Overlord Spear had made it to minor mastery. Give it just 9 more days, and every single postnatal technique would be perfected too. Blade in hand, I charged straight into the beast pack, completely fearless. Having over 20 high-level skills gave me all the confidence I needed. I used swimming dragon steps to position myself, the definite 4 slashes to exploit their weak spots, and a 4 seasons blade for the long haul. Even when squaring off against Tier 2 beasts, I easily held my ground. The weaker Tier 2 monsters dropped from just a single blow, but I played it smart and steered clear of the top-tier alphas, like the ground splitter beasts and diamond tigers. Taking those down required internal energy, which I lack for now. Elder Chien kept an eye on me from afar, while tracking his own prey. He observed that I was fighting way above my actual level, blending 3 footwork styles and 3 blade arts into one seamless flow, made me practically untouchable. He also picked up on the fact that I never seemed to tire. My passive cultivation techniques were constantly healing and reinforcing my body, right in the heat of battle. I was operating like a machine that just wouldn't quit. Soon enough, other warriors in the canyon started noticing me. They couldn't wrap their heads around who I was. Way too young to possess this kind of prowess, with far too many high-tier techniques mastered, and sporting 0 clan crests. They figured I had to be a prodigy from some elite family. During a field exercise, not a single soul would suspect that I was a convict from the primary lockup, dressed in regular clothes instead of my prison garb, a special perk reserved solely for cell number 1. Right around 4 a.m., a sudden shift occurred within me. The system pinged, and it clicked right away. I was breaking through into the postnatal realm. Disengaging from the brawl, I bolted over to the canyon wall. Elder Chin instantly materialized right by my side to watch my back. I dropped into a cross-legged stance, as a massive wave of energy surged from my dantian throughout my body. Clarity instantly washed over me, revealing the 4 stages of force that govern the postnatal realm. Inch force at entry level, hidden force at minor mastery, neutralizing force at major mastery, and penetrating force at the absolute peak. Since the system handles all cultivation automatically, it didn't just spoon-feed me these skills one by one. It unlocked all 4 simultaneously. I could already wield peak-tier penetrating force, even though my physical frame was just at entry-level postnatal. Granted, that raw physical gap meant I couldn't quite trade blows with a genuine peak stage postnatal powerhouse just yet, but the core comprehension and execution were already locked in. Suddenly, another intense wave of body cleansing struck. The thickest layer of black impurities yet began oozing over my skin. As it receded, I opened my eyes and immediately noticed the transformation. My flesh felt denser, my muscles more defined, and my skin tighter. The body tempering phase was officially history. Every single bone, muscle, and sinew have been remade to a whole new standard. The postnatal realm is all about continuously reinforcing the physical vessel to withstand those 4 variations of force. And I was already way ahead of the game. Elder Chien told me to clean up by the river and give my new postnatal skills a test run before we made our way back. I clocked a fong-mouthed deer and clocked it, completely ditching my blade. I surged penetrating power right into my fist, the absolute peak of postnatal energy, the precise kind that pierces straight through and totally wrecks the internal organs. Just one strike, blood sprayed from its mouth, and it dropped. But my own arm gave out too, hit by a blinding flash of pain, muscles on fire, and joints completely throbbing. My cultivation was barely at entry-level postnatal, way too raw to handle the recoil of penetrating power. That's when a thought hit me. What if I funneled that impact through my weapon, rather than my own flesh? I spotted a long-clawed leopard and made my move. This time, I channeled that penetrating energy straight into the flat of my blade and smacked it right across the beast's spine. The broadsword vibrated as the power surged through the steel. The leopard coughed up blood and folded instantly. But the very second it hit the dirt, my iron weapon blew apart into absolute shards right in my grip. I just stared at the empty handle, totally dazed. Behind me, Elder Chien stood completely paralyzed with disbelief. He muttered a single phrase, penetrating force projection. He noted that what I just pulled off was something the vast majority of postnatal experts could never pull off. Hell, even a few innate masters couldn't manage it. Extending penetrating power outward via a weapon demanded an incredibly profound mastery of how essence flows inside the physical frame. Typically, combatants must establish direct contact to unleash penetrating force, emitting it through steel instead. Offers incredible range and defensive leverage, mirroring the advantage of a sword wielder facing down. An unarmed brawler, armed with this trump card, I could take down any postnatal martial artist out there who hadn't gotten the hang of it, basically none of them. According to him, blasting penetrating force was pretty much a midway point. The innate tier, that whole stage, revolved around pushing chi past your physical body. For long-range strikes, a rookie innate warrior could strike from roughly 10 meters away. So, if I wielded a 5-meter spear to unleash that penetrating force, I was already halfway to that level. The blade snapped because my beginner level postnatal physique was packing a massive 10,000 kilograms of raw power, literally the muscle of a compact excavator. Channeling that penetrating energy meant every single inch of the edge had to take. That massive strain, and standard steel just couldn't handle it. Next time around, I'm getting a weapon forged from meteoric iron. We made our way back to the jail. For the next 2 days, I stuck strictly to the same routine. Chill during the day, go hunting when night falls. I ended up swapping my broadsword for a dark, meteoric iron spear. With that penetrating force projection, surging through a long-range weapon, I absolutely wrecked the beast stampede. By day 2, I advanced to the minor achievement postnatal tier, and my physical strength skyrocketed to 20,000 kilograms. Right around then, both the Northern Dark, Divine Technique, and the Boundless Art hit max level. Reaching total mastery, I knew exactly what step was next. It was time to blend them together using the Primordial Chaos technique. I couldn't help but feel pretty hyped. If this combination method could shatter the 160 rounds per minute training speed limit, it meant this brand new style could actually advance past the Grandmaster threshold. Not a single person on Blue Star had ever pulled that off. If I managed to become the pioneer who pushed past Grandmaster, I'd be making absolute history, the very first person in the entire century plus of the martial era. In order to smash through that wall, right back in my cell at 7 a.m., I pulled up my interface. Both the Northern Darkness, Divine Art, and the Limitless Art had a little icon popping up next to them, so I hit it. 2 compatible skills detected. Initiate fusion. Yes, I clicked. Suddenly, a massive tidal wave of data from both styles slammed into my brain all at once. Honestly, it felt like my head was splitting wide open. The agonizing pain lasted for a solid 3 seconds, then poof, gone. The interface then prompted me to name the brand new skill. I dubbed it the Northern Darkness Limitless Art. Right after that, 3 alerts popped up. The system handed over 10,000 proficiency points as a reward for forging a fresh technique, instantly boosting it straight to the novice tier. It then kicked off auto-leveling at 320 mastery points per minute, plus 32 realm EXP every single minute. To be honest, I was kind of let down at first. That 320 per minute mark was just the combined some of the 2 separate base skills. The blending process hadn't given me any extra perks. However, checking out the required mastery points, this upgraded art was clearly on a whole different level. Advancing from novice to minor mastery took a whopping 100,000 points, literally 10 times what either of the original skills demanded, for the exact same rank. Digging deeper into the core mechanics of the art, I spotted something that actually made my pulse race. The advanced chapters kept bringing up a specific concept: chi liquefaction. Now, if I was decoding this correctly, that right there was the path to surpassing the Grandmaster realm, the legendary next tier, that absolutely no one on Blue Star had ever managed to reach. Sure, it didn't use the martial Dao golden core phrasing that Hu Lianfeng had talked about before, but it definitely pointed to a level far beyond anything currently established. Right away, I began manual cultivation to test the upper limit after a single cycle. The pace doubled, hitting 640 per minute. After 10 cycles, the same wall left the technique incomplete. It couldn't go any higher. The cap was stuck at 640 per minute. Better than before, sure, but still hitting a wall. Then a thought struck me. I could still learn one more method. Elder Chien kept the cultivation art hidden away, but he hadn't shown me yet. If I maximized its potential and merged it into the Northern Darkness Limitless Art, the combined technique might push past the boundaries. The timeline added up. 10 days to fully perfect the newly merged art, and 5 days to get a grip on Elder Chien style. Following that, another fusion. Snapping my eyes open, I requested Elder Chien to pass down his style. Instantly, all 3 Grandmasters bolted upright in shock. Elder Chien eagerly asked if the merger was a success. I gave him a nod. The combined style was named the Northern Darkness Limitless Art, and it held clues regarding the liquefaction of chi, which could be the key to surpassing the Grandmaster rank. Though I wouldn't know for sure until I actually reached that realm myself. Zhang Hanquang piped up immediately, asking if they could practice this hybrid art. I gave a firm no. The technique demanded 2 distinct flows of chi, operating at the exact same time. meaning you had to master the primordial chaos art beforehand, since nobody else was capable of practicing that. This fuse technique belonged to me alone. Zhang Hongguang looked totally crushed, but Elder Qian had already seen this coming. He mentioned it didn't bother him. If he could guide someone with his own hands to shatter the ceiling of the Grandmaster level, he'd die a happy man. With that, he taught me his technique. This ocean-embracing method feels totally boundless, capable of taking me all the way to Grandmaster status. Once activated, I let it run for 100 cycles, and it hit that exact same limit of 160 per minute, just like every other flawed technique out there. But with both of them running together, I was raking in 80 realm experience points every minute. Going from minor postnatal achievement to the major level would take me less than 2 days flat, and hitting peak postnatal would only take about 5 days, wrapping up right before the Spirit Rhinoceros Grass quest. Honestly, the timing couldn't be better. I'd be stepping into that desert at peak postnatal, more than strong enough to hold my own. Pulling up my system display to double-check, I saw my body-tempering abilities were fully maxed out, and most of my postnatal skills were at absolute perfection too. There was just one puzzle I couldn't crack. I wasn't sure if combat moves could be merged as well. I took a look, but no fusion icon popped up next to any of them. Turns out the primordial chaos ability only applies to cultivation paths, not battle skills. So I decided to ask Elder Qian about a question that had been bugging me for a while. Why do our cultivation methods always feel so incomplete, while our fighting skills are totally flawless? He chuckled, mentioning he'd been waiting for me to bring that up, and went on to lay out 3 different theories. The first idea is rooted in history. Modern martial arts actually stem from ancient practices of the Dragon Nation. Thousands of years ago, the ruling emperors intentionally sabotaged these cultivation paths to keep their warriors weak and safeguard the throne. They left the combat techniques intact, since troops still needed real fighting power for wartime. But they completely gutted the core cultivation steps that would have made individual fighters way too powerful to manage. And that's precisely why these broken methods survived. Yet hitting a wall right at Grandmaster looks like someone scrubbed the advanced stages. The second hypothesis was more basic. Martial arts secrets just faded away due to a gap in generational teaching. Advocates pointed out that even elite fighting styles solely tapped into chi. No one had ever forged a skill harnessing the spiritual power of the Grandmaster tier. The top-tier skills capped at the innate level, while the ultimate techniques reached Grandmaster. A blatant disconnect. The third angle, pushed mostly by Western scholars, argued that Grandmaster was the absolute hard ceiling, and anything higher was just old myth and folklore. Elder Qi admitted. He kind of bought into that until I merged my techniques. Besides, that theory crumbles against old chronicles, proving that every few centuries, throughout the history of the Dragon Nation, a rare soul attained what was known as earthly immortal status, a rank way past Grandmaster. The latest instance was Zhang Sanfeng, who allegedly founded the Tai Chi Brotherhood, using a technique he cooked up himself. Every single one of these masters vanished into thin air, or ascended right after hitting that peak. Judging by what my system revealed about techniques being flawed and requiring total optimization, I personally sided with the first school of thought. Ancient rulers had deliberately tampered with formulas across all major fields. A few uncorrupted variants managed to survive, tucked away among everyday folks, which explains why earthly immortals kept popping up down through the ages. For the next 5 days, I stuck to the grind, crashing by day, stalking prey by night. By day 2, I leveled up to major achievement, hitting 30,000 kilograms of postnatal power by day 5. Peak postnatal strength hits 50,000 kilograms. That's 50 tons of pure force packed into a single punch. Combined with a piercing projection of energy, I could easily blast through 5 meters of reinforced concrete. The ocean-embracing art had also reached absolute perfection. I only needed 5 more days for the Northern Darkness Limitless art to completely max out before I could merge them again. Right on the 5th evening, we made it to the Rift World an hour ahead of schedule. The Demon Slayer Corps had unlocked the entry gates at 7 p.m., specifically for the Spirit Rhinoceros Grass Expedition, which was led by Grandmaster-level fighters. The base camp was absolutely packed, more people than I'd ever seen in my life. Elder Qin figured that about 80% of them were just onlookers, 10% actually qualified as harvesters, and the remaining 10% were just hopefuls, praying that the entry standards would get lowered. He broke down the hierarchy of the martial world for me. 80% body tempering, 15% postnatal, and a mere 5% innate. There were only around 20-something grandmasters across the entire globe. Elder Chien cleared a path straight through the massive crowd by letting loose a surge of his innate chi, gently nudging people out of our way. We grabbed my meteoric iron spear from the weapons depot and made our way over to the vehicle lot. And that's exactly when I spotted them. The Zhang clan had gathered right up near the front lines, and standing right next to them in a tighter circle, I caught sight of a face that instantly made my jaw lock up. Yiming Yuan, my own half-brother. The exact guy I had been rotting in a prison cell for. There was no way he should have been there, based on what I knew about his progress. He hadn't even broken into the postnatal realm yet. I asked Elder Chien if family members of elites got some sort of special pass to bypass the usual cultivation benchmarks. He admitted he wasn't entirely sure, since the Demon Slayer commander running Heiqing's Rift had not yet arrived, nor had the official regulations been dropped, though he figured the elite clans had already secured special perks. El Chien incroyable. Whether I had spotted Yijin Shan in the crowd, I hadn't, but Hu Linfeng clarified that Yijin Shan possessed zero martial talent. His father, Yi Haipeng, had thrown endless resources at him, merely to achieve basic proficiency in body tempering. Yijin Shan stuck strictly to running family affairs, and never ventured near the rift. Yet, Hu Linfeng caught sight of Yi Haipeng leading the Yi clan's contingent. Grinning at me, he asked, "Looking to settle that score today?" Elder Chien shut that down instantly. With a grandmaster commanding this operation, personal beefs were forbidden. Furthermore, Zhang Jinya would seize any pretext to strike at Pu Linfeng. Pu Linfeng laughed it off, saying it was just a joke, then remarked that with my current strength, Yi Haipeng wouldn't even pose a threat. He pondered aloud what kind of expression Yi Haipeng would make upon realizing his useless son had driven a martial genius out of their clan. El Chien merely smiled. He had witnessed my fighting prowess firsthand. We had trained together that afternoon, right after I advanced to peak postnatal status. The outcome? A complete deadlock without weapons. By seamlessly blending over 20 perfected skills together, I matched an early-stage innate warrior blow for 100 rounds. He could only keep me at bay by unleashing his innate chi. When things got dicey, my knack for spotting flaws, while keeping my own guard airtight, made me pretty much untouchable. To him, it felt like slamming into a brick wall. The second he made a move, I'd exploit his opening before he could touch mine. He figured that with my meteor iron spear, I could easily crush an entry-level innate fighter, but against someone at his own rank. A minor achievement innate. It was honestly a toss-up. We steered clear of the big-name clans, particularly the Zhang family. Even though today's Grandmaster escort mid-Zhang, Jinya wouldn't dare start anything. There was no use pushing our luck. Besides, I wanted to fly under the radar. My plan was to take down the E and Lee families, step by step once I got out. Not tip them off right now. At 7:20, a dark silhouette flashed across the sky above us. I looked up, stunned. Someone was flying purely on chi. That was the dead giveaway of a Grandmaster. The figure hovered right over the parking lot and spun around. Jet black hair, snow-white eyebrows, and youthful skin on what clearly was an ancient frame. He was packing a black longsword. Everything about the guy felt totally contradictory. The aura of centuries past, blending with vibrant youth inside the exact same person. Elder Chien knew exactly who he was on sight. Wang Penguin, famously dubbed the White-Browed Ageless Elder. He ran with Elder Chien's old man 15 years back when he was just a peakinate. He made the leap to Grandmaster roughly a decade ago. And even though he's well over 140, he looks like he's barely middle-aged. Grandmaster tier warriors can easily push past 300. Plus the actual advancement cut back his age big time, since he shared a history with Elder Chien's dad. That was a plus if Zhang Jinya tried to pull something. Wang Penguin wouldn't likely side with him anyway. Wang Penguin uttered a single command. Move out. And though he spoke softly, every single soul there heard it. Next, he spun around and soared toward the canyon. There wasn't any talk about required cultivation, levels, nor any limitations. The crowd just bolted. It didn't take long for me to catch on. Wang Penguin just kept putting on speed. In just minutes, body tempering cultists started lagging. Then even those at major achievement in body tempering couldn't hold a pace. I muttered quietly to Elder Chien, "This isn't a free-for-all welcome party." He's thinning the crowd using pure velocity. Elder Chien nodded. By the moment we crossed the canyon's edge, a crowd of over 10,000 had shriveled down to roughly 1,000. Pretty much everyone left was postnatal or higher. The only body tempering scrapers still moving were elite family successors, literally hauled along by their innate stage. Guardians, So the major clans did catch a break. Just a sneaky one where their kids got carried. Meanwhile, the rogue cultivators either kept up on their own steam or got dumped in the dust. Nobody could cry foul about favoritism, when the rule was simply match the pace or fail. Yet the outcome was identical. Clan brats who couldn't make the cut on talent still slipped through via family muscle. I saw how the game worked now. Looks fair up front, but it's totally rigged. That's just how this world rolled. Jogging through blistering sand for 30 minutes finally got us to a desert oasis. Even after dark, the sand kept radiating heat. Elder Chien mentioned something deep underground was constantly pumping out warmth. He gave Hu Li, Infeng, and Zhang Hongguang a heads up to stay sharp. Tier 3 beasts around here could launch ranged chi attacks. He didn't bother warning me. After our little sparring session that afternoon, he knew my fighting skills pretty much matched his own. Man, that practice match was something only the four of us actually knew about. We went at it for over 100 rounds, completely barehanded. He could barely hold me off using his innate chi. Having 20-plus maxed-out techniques made me a human fortress. I spotted every single opening he exposed, while giving him absolutely nothing to work with. Zhang Hongguang wanted a piece of me too, but I flattened him with a single punch. His peak postnatal stage couldn't even track my max level. Phantom steps. Wang Penguin guided us to a small oasis lake and hovered right above it. He unleashed a massive surge of chi and slammed a heavy palm strike straight into the water. The lake erupted violently, and then a giant whirlpool formed, sucking all the water away in just minutes. The lake bed sat totally dry, uncovering a natural cavern entrance at the bottom. Elder Chien explained that a seal had been there, an ancient matrix designed to pool spiritual energy and keep the water suspended over the cave. Wang Penguin's blast completely shattered it. Such formations were a lost art back on Blue Star, though Elder Chien's father used to study them, grasped the basic concepts. Yet making one required rare array stones. Wang Penguin yelled that we had a 3-minute window, till the water reset itself. He plunged right in, with the clans following close behind. Then the rest of the crowd, while our crew dove last. The cavern was massive and way brighter than I'd imagined. The floor was covered in a radiant blue turf. Spirit rhino grass was literally everywhere, countless stalks stretching out. Wang Penguin barked orders. Gather with care, since the cure is in the roots. Busted roots make them totally useless, and anyone wrecking too many specimens is getting kicked out. Elder Chin ordered us to scatter and bag as much as we could, focusing on my quota so I could wipe my record clean. I mentioned I'd racked up over 2,000 points already from monster hunting and just needed 30 more plants. He told me not to sweat it and to just keep on reaping. The process was brutally meticulous. Each stem took roughly 5 minutes of precise unearthing. After an hour, I pulled 10 perfect ones and snapped 2. I took a breather to get my focus back. Right then, a voice called out behind me. Hey, look who it is. I whipped around. I mean Yuan, my very own half-brother. The precise reason I ended up locked up. Stood right there, glaring with chilly astonishment. He demanded how a nobody like me sneaked inside. Elder Chin stepped up beside me and snapped bluntly. I brought him along. Got a problem with that. I mean Yuan's expression faltered, catching the unspoken threat in Elder Chien's voice, and instantly hollered for his granddad. Haiping glanced over, spotted Elder Chien, and his face instantly hardened. He hurried straight across, and welcomed Elder Chien with a respectful nod, addressing him as Brother Tianlong. Elder Chien shut him down instantly. Are we buddies? Even your late father had to call me Elder Chien. Back in the day. You really think you can talk to me as an equal? Know your place? Yihai. Ping fumbled, quickly correcting himself to Uncle Tianlong. He then begged Elder Chien to overlook whatever mess his grandson had caused, asking for the Yi family's sake. Elder Chien just scoffed. Your family holds no weight with me. Hell, even your old man, who's been dead for decades, wouldn't have any leverage here. Your grandkid messed with my disciple, and you honestly think a polite request makes it all go away. Yi Haiping just stood there, totally cornered. Sure, the Yi clan was a big deal, but they always ranked way below the Green Dragon Gang's league, and even with the gang wiped out, Yi Haiping lacked the leverage to step up against Qin Tianlong. Right then, a mocking voice echoed from behind Yi Haiping. Well, look here. If it isn't the notorious Green Dragon, gang chief Qin Tianlong, an ex-con picking on elite families, flexing your age like it means something. Give me a break. And as for you, Yi Haipeng, your clan ranks 7th in Haiqing. So why the hell are you shaking in your boots? Zhang Jinya smirked as he stepped forward from behind Yi Haiping. Zhang Jinya intervened to back hyping up the tight bond between the Zhang and clans. Then, he glared at me and sneered. He called me a stray and insulted my lineage, saying it was dirty. That completely pushed me over the edge. I snapped right back at him. Say that again? You old mutt. You're just a motherless dog who lacks any damn manners. Elder Chien caught my shoulder, but he didn't hold me back. He simply grinned and muttered, Wu Dao, you're way too blunt. Spitting facts like that is pretty rude. Zhang Jinya's expression contorted with rage. He unslung a long staff from his back and directly provoked Elder Chien. Elder Chien demanded his spear. Zhang Hongwang hurled the dark, meteoric iron weapon across the cavern, and Elder Chien snatched it out of the air. Both fighters assumed their battle stances. Yet before either could make a move, an echoing voice interrupted from above. Are you two quite done yet? Wang Penguin drifted overhead, looking thoroughly irritated. He reminded them that they came to gather herbs, not settle petty beefs, though Zhang Jinya resisted, insisting on my punishment. Wang Penguin bluntly warned him not to push his luck. Elder Chien lowered his weapon and greeted Wang Penguin respectfully. Uncle Wang. They briefly discussed Elder Chien's late father, who supposedly had been right on the verge of becoming a grandmaster, before succumbing to a buildup of old injuries. Wang Penguin lamented how cruelly destiny had treated the Chien family. Observing this interaction, Zhang Jinya attempted a different tactic. He played his ace in the hole, the Liu family. He informed Wang Penguin that Liu Xiaobai was nearing the rank of minor attainment grandmaster, and that his very own great-granddaughter was set to marry into the Liu household. He hinted that Wang Penguin, being a mere novice grandmaster, could ill afford to cross the Liu clan. The cavern fell completely silent. The crowd watched intently, wondering if Zhang Jinya had just signed his own death warrant. Wang Penguin's eyes narrowed slightly. With a chilling smirk, he sneered, Test me then. Let's see if I won't drop you. Zhang Jinya completely froze up. He fully expected Wang Penguin to back down, or at least yield the floor. Instead, the Grandmaster had totally called his bluff. Zhang Jinya couldn't tell if Wang Penguin possessed some powerful secret backer of his own, or if he just didn't care about the Luo family. Following a tense silence, Zhang Jinya finally retreated. He hurled one parting threat at Elder Chien, warning that prison wouldn't keep him safe indefinitely, before storming off. Meanwhile, just a short distance away, I caught Yi Haiping and Yi Mingyuan whispering. Yi Haiping had recognized Elder Chien's true power and cautioned Yi Mingyuan that the old man's past wounds had fully healed, and he might even be stronger now. Yi Mingyuan grumbled that I was a lucky dog for scoring such a heavy-hitting mentor behind bars. However, Yi Haiping brushed off any threat from Elder Chien, noting that Zhang Jinya would handle him upon release. Once Zhang Jinya had departed, Elder Chien offered his thanks to Wang Penguin. Wang Penguin sighed heavily and cautioned him, explaining that he could shield Elder Chien today, but not indefinitely. The moment Liu Xiaobai reached minor attainment, Grandmaster Zhang Jinya just might actually dare to raid the first prison. Elder Chien gave a solemn nod and thanked him once more. Wang Penguin soared back up to keep guarding the cavern, while we turned back to our reaping. As soon as Wang Penguin left, I quietly questioned Elder Chien if the two of us joining forces could take down Zhang Jinya. He just shook his head, noting the massive gulf between minor and major innate achievement. With double the chi capacity and twice the striking distance, we could probably force a draw, but actually taking him out? Next to impossible. And even if we pulled it off, the Liu family's twin grandmasters had his back. If Liu Xiaobai managed to hit the minor achievement, grandmaster level, the two of them together could go toe-to-toe with a peak grandmaster. We couldn't risk showing my hand too early. Elder Chien warned me to steer clear of the Rift World. After today, he'd burn his points to cash in on every technique and cultivation method listed in the Demon Slayer exchange shop. I hit the prison to train while he kept watch. The moment I hit major innate achievement, I'd head into the wasteland to hunt Tier 3 monsters and grind for the Gold Demon Slayer rank, a title that would really open some doors. He reminded me that clock was ticking. The harvesting took a solid 5 hours, leaving me with 60 stalks worth 6,000 points. My three masters also handed over everything they gathered, adding another 170 stalks, or 17,000 points. Tallying that up with my hunting rewards, my grand total climbed past 25,000. I formally cleared the bar for Bronze Demon Slayer status, though I didn't even bother trading in my token. Once we got back to the cell, Elder Chien passed me over a dozen postnatal battle techniques, plus 2 cultivation paths, capable of unlocking major Grandmaster achievement. Literally everything the Demon Slayer shop had on the shelves. For days in, right in the middle of mastering the Overlord Spear, the system pinged. I'd officially broken through to innate entry. The transition was incredibly intense. My chi condensed tightly inside the dantian, whirling faster and faster until a brand new power took shape. An innate chi denser and more potent than anything prior. It ripped right through my meridians, stretching them to double their width as dark impurities oozed from my pores. In the nastiest layer yet. Once things settled down, I lifted my hand, and a faint strand of pale chi manifested over my palm. Elder Qian's eyes instantly gleamed. Give it a shot using penetrating force. I snapped my wrist forward. The chi zipped into the dirt like a bullet, drilling a fist-sized tunnel of crazy depth, straight into the stone floor. After that, he broke down some next-level concepts. Since innate chi could actually manifest externally, I could fuse it with penetrating force and project it right through a weapon. The move was known as double penetrating force. You coat the weapon in chi, drive the penetrating force through that weapon, and into the chi, then unleash the energy itself. Honestly, it was way more devastating than doing either trick by itself, but it was insanely tough to pull off. Even his own old man had only nailed it, maybe 1 out of 10 times before he passed away. Grabbing my spear, I wrapped it in innate chi, pumped penetrating force right down the shaft, and into the energy, then let it rip. The chi exploded off the spear tip and blasted a massive, bull-sized crater into the dirt. First try, completely flawless. Elder Qian just stared at the pit, then at me, and then back at the pit. His jaw completely dropped. He dedicated his life to mastering double penetrating force and never got it down. Meanwhile, his dad, who was basically a grandmaster, could barely do it. Yeah, I just crushed it on my very first go. He told me to give it another shot. I did, leaving another perfect hole. Something totally snapped inside him. It was written all over his face. A whole lifetime of pride in his gifts completely crushed. He'd been hailed as a prodigy for his entire century-long career. But watching me casually pull off a move that even elite grandmasters couldn't grasp made all those achievements feel totally worthless. I asked him if he wanted to throw down. He shut that down instantly. With my level 8 chi and double penetrating power, just one shot from me would turn his old bones to dust. He told me to keep grinding on the Overlord Spear, because once it was maxed out and fused with that double penetrating strike, even peak level 8 warriors wouldn't stand chance. I nodded, feeling a little let down. I'd gotten so ridiculously strong that I couldn't even find a decent sparring partner anymore. An idea hit me while I was gripping my practice weapon. What if I didn't channel the penetrating force from the blade itself, but sparked it deep in my core instead, drove it right through the shaft, and layered it into the chi at the spearhead? That's 3 levels of penetrating impact instead of 2. Honestly, back when I first hit postnatal, my physical frame just couldn't take that kind of punishment. But now at level 8, my body was easily tough enough. Elder Qian froze. That angle had never even crossed his mind. He told me to give it a shot, but stay cautious. My very first go completely wrecked the wooden training spear. It couldn't handle that double-stacked energy, surging right through it. Elder Qian stepped out and returned a quick 3 minutes later, lugging a solid, pitch-black spear, his family's prize heirloom weapon, crafted entirely out of meteoric iron. It felt way heavier, colder to the touch, and exponentially tougher than anything the Demon Slayers kept in stock. I gave another shot, and this time the spear stood ground. No rattling, no noise. But the chi on the spearhead just dissolved. The second that triple force made contact, the weapon wasn't the issue here. It was the chi itself. Innate chi simply lacked the density to take 3 successive waves of piercing power. Pumping more chi into it didn't do the trick, either. It wasn't a matter of volume, but structural strength. Edition had proven that innate chi maintains a set consistency, no matter your cultivation tier. The sole variable when you level up is your total capacity. Right then, I flashed back to how innate chi is actually formed. By squeezing postnatal chi inside a swirling maelstrom, deep within the dantian. What if I pulled off that exact same trick on the outside, twisting and compressing the innate chi right on the spearhead, until it forged something way more solid? I began spinning the chi around the tip, utilizing the outer shell to crush the inner core. Slowly, the milky white chi shifted to clear glass. Elder Qian's eyes went wide as saucers, and he yelled for me to watch out. He could sense it. The energy was morphing into something far beyond ordinary chi. He muttered under his breath that it looked just like the chi liquefaction I had brought up The shaft started vibrating violently. The condensed chi was breaching the limits of what even meteoric iron could hold. I couldn't hold back any longer. I unleashed all 3 tiers of the penetrating force. From body to spear, from spear to chi, and chi blasted outward. A blinding white beam erupted from the tip and slammed violently into the concrete floor. The blast rocked the entire holding cell. Right at ground zero, a basin-sized crater, 10 meters deep, now gaped, where it had blasted straight through solid concrete. Triple penetrating force. It actually worked. Elder Chien just stood there, frozen and muttering. He muttered that even a typical Grandmaster might fail to unleash that kind of raw devastation. Grandmasters utilize the same innate chi as anyone else. They simply possessed more of it and managed it via spiritual force. Yet, what I had condensed onto, that spearhead had clearly gone way beyond innate chi. He asked if I noticed the chi nearing a liquid state, and I nodded, confirming it had. It was right on the verge of liquefying, but I backed off because the spear was vibrating, and I didn't want to wreck his family heirloom. The real catch was time. Compressing chi like that took way too long in a standard fight. It was a lethal finisher, totally devastating, but agonizingly slow to charge. Elder Chien rolled his eyes. The moment I complained about those drawbacks, he pointed out that he hadn't even mastered double penetrating force yet, while here I was, whining that triple force wasn't practical enough. Then, he took the spear from my hands. Observing my technique had sparked an idea for him. By treating the spear's shaft as a conduit for the impact, he could skip the grueling chi projection phase entirely and pull off his very own version of double penetrating force. He gave it a shot and nailed it, even though his variation only worked at point-blank range. The kinetic energy would only discharge once the spearhead made physical contact with the target. Even so, for a guy who had pursued this mastery his whole life, it was a massive milestone. He stared at the weapon, then glanced back at me, shaking his head with a tired grin, while trying to instruct me. He had ultimately ended up learning from me instead. By the following afternoon, the system chimed. The Northern Darkness, a boundless art, had finally reached perfection. That familiar prompt popped up right on cue. I instantly merged it with the ocean, assimilating the art without a second thought. Surprisingly, there wasn't any pain this time. The data completely integrated in just a single second. I ended up naming this new technique the Myriad Fusion Art. Keep it simple and practical, right? Since I'd be blending even more methods into it down the road, I really didn't want a title that kept growing longer. The system granted a solid 30,000 starting proficiency, boosting it straight to the entry-level auto-training speed. It hit 800 per minute after just one manual cultivation round. Then it doubled to 1,600 after knocking out 10 rounds. But then it hit that same old bottleneck, technique incomplete. So the absolute cap was locked at 1,600 per minute. As I analyzed the mechanics of this new art, no higher cultivation realm had unlocked yet. It still pointed to chi liquefaction as the ultimate way forward, just with way more precision and efficiency than before. By now, I'd figured out the pattern. A new realm only shows up once the initial proficiency breaks through a 10-fold milestone. The Myriad Fusion Art kicked off at 30,000, meaning I needed 100,000 to open up the next tier. Every time I absorbed a Grandmaster level technique, it added roughly another 20,000. I still had 2 more arts from the Demon Slayer Vault, which would get me up to 70,000. That still left me 30,000 short. I mentioned to Elder Chien that I required more techniques. He replied that only about a dozen arts across Blue Star ever reached the advanced tier of Grandmaster. The Demon Slayer archives only held 3 of them, while the rest were guarded by elite sects and martial academies. Even so, he promised to try and source some more, though it's going to take a while. Just then, Hu Liangfeng sat up in bed and muttered softly, "Actually, I've got one that can push past the Grandmaster level." The cell went dead silent. Elle dit chien stared. Straight at him. "You mean the carefree art?" Hu Liangfeng nodded. Zhang Hongwang completely blew up. "You've been hoarding it this whole damn time." Hu Liangfeng shot right back, reminding him it was the carefree sex. Sacré ancestral technique. He'd never have come clean if I didn't absolutely need it. Zhang Hongwang muttered. The carefree sect had been completely destroyed decades ago. Totally wiped out. Solely because they held the secrets to the carefree art, which supposedly allowed one to surpass a Grandmaster. But the irony was, the sect itself never even produced a single innate warrior. Meanwhile, the splintered Northern Darkness sect, utilizing their Northern Darkness divine art, had far better luck. Hu Liangfeng filled them in. His master used to be the carefree sect's technique elder. knowing the manual would only invite bloodshed. His master secretly handed it down to Hu Liangfeng, an unofficial student, bypassing all the senior disciples. Yet the technique was downright bizarre. It ran smoothly until hitting peak postnatal, and then you just hit a total wall. His master had a hunch that their version was missing something, but nobody could ever figure out what it was. He looked my way and warned that if I chose to learn it, I'd be inheriting the carefree sect's deadly blood feud, as the killers who wiped them out were still dynamic. Then he sighed, brushing his own terms aside. The art was totally useless to him anyway. If I could actually pull it off, it'd do right by his old master's memory. Leaning close, he muttered, "I'll whisper it to you." Hu Liangfeng whispered the carefree art into my ear. Once he finished, I let him know I'd memorized it. But checking out the system panel, something seemed off. The base level read, Carefree Art, Unlearned, 0 out of 10, literally just 10 points to unlock entry level. That meant it could only carry someone to the postnatal realm at best. It's 100 times weaker than the Northern Darkness Divine Art. I questioned Hu Liangfeng on whether he was positive this could surpass Grandmaster. He claimed he was merely passing down what his master had given him. He confessed the carefree sect had never actually produced a single innate warrior. Most disciples ultimately swapped over to the Northern Darkness Divine Art and branched off to found a Northern Darkness sect. I gave it to him straight. This technique feels like it caps out at postnatal level. He frowned, muttering to himself about whether it had really been tampered with. I began activating the technique. Carefree Art, the Northern Darkness Divine Art has already maxed out at perfection. Since you two share the exact same roots, let's kick it up with one single surge, and the auto-cultivation speed skyrockets straight to 160 per minute. No way that's possible for a skill with a base proficiency of just 10 points. Something was shifting. Suddenly, a massive flood of system alerts popped up. The carefree art was identified as the true evolution of the Northern Darkness Divine Art. It absorbed every single one of the Northern Darkness Divine Arts, stacked bonuses, instantly hitting absolute perfection. And because the Northern Darkness, the divine skill, was already integrated into the myriad fusion technique, the carefree style seamlessly merged right into the system, prompting me to label this new method. I decided to stick with the myriad fusion art. The payout? A cool 100,000 starting proficiency level. Talk about the exact milestone I was chasing. An entirely new tier was finally unlocked. Shutting my eyes, I carefully analyzed the fresh mechanics. As for the core principles, the myriad fusion art now centered heavily around the foundations of the carefree art. Suddenly, it all made sense. The carefree style was never intended for standalone practice. It serves as the concluding half of the Northern Darkness Divine Art. You absolutely had to master the Northern Darkness Divine Art to absolute perfection first, hitting the milestone of Grandmaster. Only then would the carefree art actually kick in. No wonder the carefree sect got completely stuck at the postnatal phase. For generations, they just never met that vital prerequisite, and tucked away within the deepest layers of the new system. I uncovered it. The martial Tao Golden Core, right past Qi liquefaction sits the condensation phase, which hardens that fluid Qi into a solid core. This was the mythical boundary Hu Lin Feng once brought up, dismissing it as mere lore from an ancient scroll. I simply couldn't hold back my excitement. Second Master, it really is the Golden Core. It's actually real. Hu Liangfeng snapped out of his daydream. Say what? The carefree art can reach the Golden Core. I gave a quick nod. The standalone carefree art merely hits the absolute ceiling of the liquefaction realm. But when blended with the limitless method and the ocean-embracing style, my myriad fusion art can push all the way to the Golden Core. Hu Liangfeng caught onto the massive implications right away. So the Northern Darkness Divine Art and the carefree art were meant to be a single discipline all along. It's verified. Elder Qian pieced the history together. The carefree sect definitely divided their founder's original style into two separate parts to prevent it from getting stolen whole. Whoever pulled off that split was incredibly talented, ensuring both halves worked perfectly on their own. Yet, even the full original had been modified. At some point, the carefree art by itself could only get you to the liquefaction realm, not Golden Core. My combined version pushed past that, since it blended other methods into the mix too. Zhang Hongguang cozied up to Hu Lin Feng and begged to learn the carefree art. Hu Lin Feng warned him that it required mastering the Northern Darkness Divine Art beforehand, which clashes heavily with other arts. Zanong Wang would have to scrap his entire cultivation base and restart from scratch. He noped out instantly. Elder Chien laid out the brutal truth for everyone. Without the primordial chaos art to run multiple cultivation styles at once, none of this was even possible. Their sole hope was tracking down the follow-up techniques that aligned with what they already knew. Otherwise, Grandmaster was as far as they'd go. The passive cultivation speed of the upgraded Myriad Fusion art hit 1,600 points per minute, yielding 160 realm experience per minute. The road to Golden Core lay open, and I was the only soul on Blue Star capable of walking it. Who? Li Yimfeng seemed re-energized after learning the carefree art, now truly able to advance past Grandmaster. I pressed him on who wiped out the carefree sect. He just shook his head, wanted to keep me out of trouble. But Zhang Hongguang spilled the beans anyway. It was Li Changhua and his Myriad Law sect. Li Yinfeng barked at him for bringing it up. But Zhang Hongguang just stated the obvious, considering how rapidly I was leveling up. Even a peak Grandmaster wouldn't pose a threat forever. Elder Chien filled in the rest of the blanks. Li Changhua was among the trailblazing martial artists. Back when spiritual energy first returned to Blue Star, over a century ago, he picked up training in his 30s and unlocked Grandmaster status by his 70s. An insane pace for such a resource-starved era. Once he became a Grandmaster, he established the Myriad Lost sect, which existed solely to hoard every single martial technique on the planet. They wiped out over 20 rival sects, including the Carefree sect. Li Chenghua also wielded a malicious technique, known as the Demon Cloud Palm, sparking rumors that he inherited the legacy of the Demon Gate, a 400-year-old wicked cult that preyed on weaker warriors, blood, and cultivation. The Demon Gate was only crushed for good when Zhang Sanfeng, the final terrestrial immortal, stepped in. Elder Chien noted that Li Chenghua's raw power easily ranked within the top 3 across all of Blue Star. Until I hit peak Grandmaster level, I needed to actively avoid crossing paths with him. I conceded the Carefree sect's blood feud would have to wait until I completely surpassed the Grandmaster realm. As the days passed, I fell into a solid routine, practicing the Overlord Spear throughout the day and hunting beasts by night. The upgraded Myriad Fusion art yielded 3,200 proficiency points per minute during focused manual cultivation. It still hit that incomplete bottleneck after 10 cycles. At this rate, achieving total mastery would take 24 days. Day 2, minor achievement, innate stage. Day 6, major achievement, innate stage. Day 12, peak innate stage. By day 20, the system announced my Grandmaster status. Man, that breakthrough was wild. An intense surge of chi shot from my dantian, straight to my head, causing my skull to split with pain. Then, something finally unlocked in my upper dantian, the very core of consciousness. A massive wave of spiritual energy erupted from my body, carrying my innate chi along with it. This right here was spiritual force, the ultimate hallmark of a true Grandmaster. It basically turned awareness into a tangible energy that could manipulate external chi. Reining my internal chi back in, I projected my spiritual perception outward. It enveloped my entire cell, then expanded across the whole cell block. I could sense every single inmate in their quarters, pinpointing their exact locations and movements, even though I couldn't perceive faces or features through solid concrete walls. This remained a Grandmaster's ultimate edge, complete awareness of any hidden threats nearby. The massive disturbance woke my 3 masters, who stared at me, totally dumbfounded, while Zhang Hongguang muttered about how it had scarcely been a month since I first picked up martial arts. Elder Chien verified what they were witnessing. Spiritual power projection, the definitive proof of reaching the Grandmaster tier. My skin had shifted once more, becoming smooth and radiant like a newborn baby's. The detoxification process was milder this go-around, yet the physical evolution felt far more absolute. Elder Chien then inquired about my timeline for leaving, since my merit points could easily wipe out my sentence. However, I discovered a special right, reserved solely for gold-tier demon slayers. The absolute authority to command the demon slayers, the local military forces of whichever city they held. Yeah, that was the kind of clout I craved. Not just raw muscle, but legit institutional backing. I wasn't looking to just take out my rivals. I wanted to totally wreck them through the system, trapping them in rules they couldn't wiggle out of. I told Elder Chien that I wasn't bouncing just yet. I'd stick around until hitting the Gold Demon Slayer rank, roughly a cool 1,000,000 points at the Grandmaster level. Hunting tier 3 beasts would be a breeze now, so 10 months should totally do it. He gave a nod. It's your call. 10 months it is then. After that, I'd stroll right out of those iron gates and square up every single debt I owed. Over the following months, I kept blending skill after skill, straight into the myriad fusion art. With every single merge, my baseline proficiency and learning pace shot up. Just 4 days after hitting Grandmaster, the first fusion landed. 12 days later, another followed. Elder Chien cashed in every favor available to get fresh cultivation scrolls. Sneaked into the cell block one by one. I soaked them all up. Eventually, the training speed finally hit a ceiling at 1/10 of the baseline proficiency. The system chimed in, letting me know I'd completely maxed out my skills and natural potential. But even with that cap, the stats were wild. After combining a grand total of 10 different skills, the myriad fusion art reached a whopping 300,000. Base proficiency leveling up at 30,000 every minute, alongside 3,000 realm experience points per minute. My overall cultivation ranks steadily soared. I cleared minor Grandmaster achievement on day 12 and hit major achievement 6 days later. Following that, I peaked out at the Grandmaster rank. After another 12 days passed. Then, on the 20th day after hitting Grandmaster status, the system rang out once again. Past the Grandmaster stage lies the liquefaction realm. This breakthrough hurt way more than any before. Every single bit of my body's innate chi got packed into a swirling maelstrom. Within my dantian, the cloud of chi turned to vapor. That vapor thickened into mist, and then a solitary, pale droplet spilled from the heart of the vortex. More kept dripping, and by the time it wrapped up, my dantian was completely drained of chi. In its place sat a reservoir of milky fluid, innate true liquid. As it started surging through my energy pathways, the agony surpassed anything I'd ever felt. It honestly felt like my meridians were ripping apart. Yet with every completed circuit, a wave of warmth rushed in to mend the damage, leaving the pathways broader and far sturdier. Cut to 10 cycles later, and the fluid was gliding along without a hint of pain. Squeezing my hand into a fist, the surrounding air vibrated. My raw power had skyrocketed to at least 1,000,000 kilos, if not higher, when I funneled that fluid into the ancestral sphere and unleashed a triple penetrating strike. The shockwave blasted straight through a hillside, tearing a tunnel that let the sunlight right through. Gazing at the destruction, only one thought crossed my mind. This is straight up superhuman. Flash forward a month, and I hit minor mastery in liquefaction. 2 months after that, I achieved major mastery. My Demon Slayer score topped 1,000,000, hitting gold rank. Somewhere far away, the half-dozen founding Grandmasters of the Demon Slayer Corps called an online conference regarding an 18-year-old who went from a nobody to a gold-tier slayer. In a mere 7 months, they bickered over my legitimacy, analyzed my battle recordings, and debated if I truly possessed the legendary sacred martial body. They wanted to call me into HQ, but everyone was tied up dealing with beast outbreaks during mating season, so they gave a month's grace period. I was completely in the dark about that. As I stepped back inside the cell, holding onto the golden token, Elder Chin locked eyes with me and softly asked, "Set to roll?" I gave a nod. He passed over a name and location. Ghost 7, an informant who'd gather intel on all my rivals. And if I wanted, Ghost 7 could also pull together the scattered survivors of the Green Dragon crew. Elder Chien advised against rushing the Zhongs, told me to wait for his release so we could team up. Plus he gave a heads up that despite my strength, certain high-tech weapons on Blue Star could still take me off the board. Hu Linfeng grinned and told me to watch my back. He didn't really have much else to say, since Elder Chien had covered all the bases. Zhang Hongwang gave me a look full of quiet affection, mentioning that his own foes were already buried. His sole lingering regret was his girl, taken by human traffickers. He'd never tracked her down before being locked up. He asked me to keep an eye out for her if possible. If I found her, just bring her by to see him. And if I couldn't, well, it had been more than a year. He had no clue if she was even breathing. His voice faded out as he gave a sigh. Never mind, just stay out of trouble. I gazed at the 3 mentors before me. The men who took a broke, framed orphan boy and built him into the absolute strongest on Blue Star. I offered a deep bow, thanking them for everything. Once I balanced the ledger, I'm going to return and rescue the 3 of you. Elder Chien told me to get moving. Stay safe, Hu Linfeng urged. Just go. Don't glance behind you. It brings bad juju. Zhang Hongwang merely grinned. Offering one final bow, I unlocked the cell door and headed straight for the main exit, never once glancing back.